IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It is Friday. We are one day away from Notre Dame kicking off their home schedule for the 2024 season. They host Northern Illinois for their home opener this season. It'll be at 3:30, excuse me, is the slated they say kickoff time. That's more of the broadcast time. The kickoff will be closer to like 3:37, 3:38. But it's a big one for Notre Dame, just another chance for this football team to go out and get better as they continue their path and continue their climb to hopefully what is a deep run in the postseason this year, coming off their big win over Texas A&M. So today is Friday, which means it's Friday free-for-all time. So it's time for you guys to get your questions in that you want me to answer here during the show. We'll do the best I can to get them all in, and we'll have some fun with it. So, Archer, fundraiser show, that big super chat we did a fundraiser a couple years ago for local community, and somebody gave that big one then. I think somebody asked beforehand, what's the biggest super chat that anyone's ever given? And I said it was $500. It was for a fundraiser. But yeah, so that's what we got going on today, everybody. Got about 21 questions started so far, so we'll see if any more good ones come in. But we're going to get rocking and rolling here pretty soon. You guys know what to do. Put the MB in there or put a mailbag emoji, and I'll do my best to see it and star it and get it answered. If you easiest thing to do to see something get started and get moved to the top is to put in a super chat. We'll obviously do that as well. And it'll be it's going to be a fun show. So hopefully you guys are ready for it and bring those questions, and we'll get rocking and rolling here with the Friday free-for-all mailbag. Just a reminder, tomorrow we will have a post-game show. We'll start it'll either be 10 minutes or less usually is when we'll get started after the game. It'll be Vince, Ryan, Trevor, and Sean Davis tomorrow. So it'll be a lot of fun. Also, Sunday night, 7:00 p.m. Sunday night, Vince and I will do our Upon Further Review. After we break down the game, we'll be ready to rock and roll and let you guys know what we saw from the game. Let's dive into we do have a super chat here to start things off from my guy AST12321. His question is, what ranked team is most likely to get upset? I assume that he's referring to this weekend's game. Let's go. There's honestly not a lot of games where I necessarily see a ranked team being upset. I'll give you a couple. I do think there are a couple, although I wouldn't predict them to happen, but I do think there are a couple. Now, Arkansas plays at Oklahoma State this weekend. Oklahoma State is obviously ranked 16th. They're a 10-point favorite over the Razorbacks. I expect Oklahoma State to win that game, but I do not think it's going to be the sleepwalk that maybe the spread would lead us to believe. I do think that Sam Pittman did some things this offseason to help that team get better, and including hiring Bobby Petrino, who I don't really care much for as a human being, but he's a heck of an offensive mind. And they hung up 70 on Arkansas Pine Bluff in the opener. Now, again, I realize it's Arkansas Pine Bluff, and I realize that's an FCS team, and I realize that's not a very good FCS team, but they still hung up 70. Look, Tennessee hung up 69 on an FCS team, and everybody's acting like their quarterback's going to go out and win the Heisman this year, and they're a national championship contender, but we're not talking about Arkansas hanging up a 70 spot. So I do think it was impressive. They did get the quarterback to transfer in from Boise State this past offseason. He's a pretty dynamic guy, passed for 229 yards and 2 touchdowns in the win over Pine Bluff, also rushed for 88 yards and 2 more touchdowns. So I think Arkansas's got some weapons. They're not super, super talented, but are they good enough to go on the road and beat Oklahoma State? Yeah, they're good enough to go on the road and beat Oklahoma State. I'm not predicting it, but it's certainly possible. That's a team that I think has a chance to get upset this weekend. Georgia Tech goes on the road at Syracuse. Georgia Tech is favored by 3. Georgia Tech is ranked. I predict Georgia Tech to win this game, but I won't be shocked if Syracuse wins this football game. We got a lot to learn about Syracuse. This is only going to be game number 2 of the Fran Brown era. Didn't get off to a great start. Ohio had a 6-0 lead in the second quarter, but then Syracuse kind of ran away with it after that. So we'll see if Syracuse can put up a fight. Kyle McCord threw for 354 yards and 4 touchdowns in that first game. Aronde Gadsden is back and healthy. We can have the debate if he's a tight end or a wide receiver, but that's a team that I like and think Syracuse did a really good job of sort of stacking up their roster a little bit this offseason with some good transfers. But the big thing for them is getting Gadsden back. Him being banged up last year killed their offense, absolutely killed their offense. He's a very talented player. Big kid, athletic, had almost 1,000 yards in 2022, beat Benjamin Morrison for a touchdown when Notre Dame played them 2 years ago. Getting him back is huge. So that's one to keep an eye on for this weekend. Iowa State, Iowa, that is a potential upset. I don't see it. I got Iowa winning that game, but it's certainly one to keep an eye on heading into the weekend. Kansas at Illinois. Kansas is a 4.5-point favorite, and they're playing on the road. I like that Illinois team to be a solid middle-of-the-road Big Ten team that I think – look, I've said this before. I think Illinois is going to upset somebody this year. They're not – I don't view them as a contender for the league crown. They got the same question marks at quarterback that they had coming into the season, right? But, Luke Altmaier's got another year in the system. They've got some talent in the backfield. So Malik Elzy's caught a couple passes for 51 yards and a touchdown. You guys remember him. You guys remember Caden Fegan, who's a Notre Dame recruited for a little bit, ended up passing on. He rushed for over 100 yards in the opener against Eastern Illinois. So, Illinois is a team that I look at as a team to watch. I do think they're going to upset some people this year. I really do. And I just don't know if it's going to be this weekend. We'll see. But that's another one to keep an eye on. Couple other games. Let's see here. Oklahoma, Houston. Well, I don't think that'll be close. I'll tell you what, I would have gone with Boise State at Oregon as a potential upset until Oregon struggled with Idaho last weekend. The fact that Oregon struggled with Idaho last weekend to me means Oregon's going to be locked in. They're going to be locked in, and I see them coming out against this game, and unfortunately for Boise, taking all their frustrations from the opener out on the Broncos. So that's kind of how I see that one going. But those are a couple of the upsets that I see happening this week, or that I could see happening this weekend, I should say. I mean, obviously, if NC State upsets Tennessee, that's a potential upset. I don't see it happening, but that would be a potential upset. If Michigan beats Texas, that would be considered an upset. Texas is not only higher ranked, but they're also a touchdown favorite. But I don't see any of those happening. And a lot of the other ones, Kansas State at Tulane, I mean, potentially, but this isn't Willie Fritz's Tulane, so I don't see that one happening. Baylor at Utah, I mean, I guess I'm not super high on Baylor coming into this year, but most of the other games are games that should be dominated by the higher ranked team. So those are some games to keep an eye on. There's going to be some decent games this weekend, just not a lot of games where I see a ranked team being upset this weekend. I mean, actually, there's a couple other games this weekend that I got my eye on. Actually, tonight, BYU at SMU is a game that I'm definitely going to have my eye on top of some of the games that I talked about. That Arkansas-Oklahoma State game is one that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on. Pitt at Cincinnati is a very interesting game. It's an old Big East rivalry. ACC versus Big 12. Both of those teams were bad last year. And they both need this win. Definitely need this win. Troy at Memphis. These are two of the better group of 5 teams, or at least they're supposed to be two of the better group of 5 teams. Troy lost their opener at home to Nevada this past weekend, which was a bad loss for them. But that's one to keep an eye on for this weekend. There's a couple other games that I had my eye on of some unranked teams. Cal at Auburn, I really want to see. I thought Cal and Auburn both looked really good in their openers. I want to see that game. That was a very hard-fought game last weekend. South Carolina, Kentucky. Shane Beamer's on a little bit of the warm seat, in my opinion. I want to see how he performs. Michigan State at Maryland is another game of unranked teams that I'm very much looking forward to watching this weekend. I love the quarterback from Michigan State. I was watching that game in the airport, sitting at Fridays in the airport. I was sitting at the front. They had a restaurant, Fridays restaurant at the airport in Dallas, and I was sitting there watching that game on my iPad. And he made some big mistakes, but that kid's just turned 18 years old, or actually he doesn't even turn 19 years old. He's voted a team. He's going to be so good. But I really like the Michigan State defense. I thought they were pretty salty in the opener, so I'm very curious to see what they can do. But I think that's a game that I definitely have my eye on. Those are two teams that I think could sneak up on some people this year. But I really like that Michigan State team. I think they got a chance to be much, much improved this season. I think that's pretty much the game. As I was looking through the schedule earlier, those were games I had an eye on. Virginia at Wake Forest, obviously that's one that matters for Notre Dame. You want to see Virginia win that game. Nice to see their Notre Dame's opponents win some games. We talked yesterday about Colorado, Nebraska. That's obviously an unranked game that I've got my eye on. Texas Tech at Washington State, the Pac-2 is going to look to get a big win this weekend. Actually, two. Oregon State plays at San Diego State. So the Pac-2 got a big weekend for the Pac-2. They got to go out and get some wins this weekend. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, we'll get to that. But thank you for that question. That I always like talking a little bit of college football. Absolutely. Aiden Benami, real quick. What is Faison's injury? Just has a sprained ankle. It's nothing severe. So sprained ankles can linger a little bit. So if I was Notre Dame, I'd be very cautious. You need to get him healthy. You need a healthy Jordan Faison this season. So I would not rush him back at all for this weekend's matchup. So let's get back to the top, and we're going to get started with another question from Aiden Benami. And he says, does Madden Fariemo or Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng have any scheduled game visits yet? Any new wide receiver intel? If I had new receiver intel, I'd put it on the message board, not talk about it in the podcast. But it's nothing new beyond what we've talked about before with the kids that they've offered. And then they're going to continue scouring the nation. Games just started. They're going to get on the road and go check guys out. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I think they're both going to games this weekend, and I expect both of them to be at Notre Dame for visits. I don't know that they've scheduled them that I know of. I would assume that at least one of them is going to come in town for Louisville, which is the 28th. That's going to be a big recruiting weekend for Notre Dame. And I certainly expect Madden Fariemo to be in maybe for that game, but potentially also later in the year. So, yes, I do expect both of them to be in the on campus at Notre Dame, and they're also both visiting schools, I believe, this weekend. So Aiden Regan with a question. Week 1 overreactions are finally over. What do you think about this rough draft of the Irish, and what other teams are you high on right now? I mean, look, Notre Dame went on the road and beat a top 25 team that I think is a good football team that a lot of people in this chat said that they thought Notre Dame was going to struggle with and didn't know if they could beat. And, all the national prognosticators picked against Notre Dame. Not all of them, that's hyperbolic, but a lot of them picked against Notre Dame. So there's a lot of people that didn't think that Notre Dame could win this football game. And they went out and got it done and did what they needed to do. So, yeah, I think this is a good football team. I mean, Notre Dame showed me on Saturday that they are what I think that they are going to be in a lot of areas. Are they a finished product? No, I didn't expect them to be. I tried to tell everybody, and most of you understand this, you're not going to look like a finished product in the opener when you play a good team. You're going to look like a team that's playing their first game against another good team playing their first game, and there's going to be some mistakes. But the thing about this team is this all this stuff will get cleaned up. This mistake, that mistake, that not being on the same page, this, that, and the other. But what matters is do you have toughness? This is what I said about the offensive line a couple weeks ago when I was talking about this is a big year for Joe Rudolph. I said, look, they're going to make mistakes early in the year. Fully expect them to make mistakes. They're going to give up pressures. They're going to give up minuses, but that stuff will come over time. But what you do not need experience to do is to play hard, to play tough. That you don't need, 1,000 snaps under your belt. And you're like, oh, I finally figured out I got to be physical. I got to be tough. I got to get after it. No, you should do that the first moment you step on the field. And we certainly saw that, Aiden, from the offensive line. So, I don't know that I've overreacted too much to that. I mean, you always kind of have those fun overreactions from stuff, but with this Notre Dame team, I like what I saw. Some of the guys that we thought would maybe take some time to get rolling, I thought looked pretty good in their first starts. I mean, I thought Drake Bowen obviously has stuff he's got to clean up, but Kingston William-Asa has some stuff to clean up. Jaden Alsbury has some stuff to clean up. Same with Jalen Sneed. But they were not – I mean, the moment was not at all too big for those guys. I mean, I thought they handled the moment incredibly well. And same with Adon Schuler, same with Christian Gray. Those are guys that make big mistakes early, bounce back, didn't let it phase them. I thought the maturity showed by this football team was really impressive. And I'm not even talking about the veterans. I'm talking about the young players. And that's something that for me, Aiden, was really important to see, because that's the one thing you don't know, right? Like, I know this team is talented. And even people that maybe weren't super optimistic about the A&M game, I don't know that anybody's like, gee, I don't know if Notre Dame has talent. It was like, hey, yeah, they've had talent in the past too, and they still didn't win these football games. And so I think all those things are aspects of building your football team. I mean, those are all aspects of what really goes into being a championship team. It's yeah, talent and all depth and all that, but you've got to have heart, you've got to have toughness, you've got to be able to overcome adversity, be able to handle rough environments, and Notre Dame certainly did that. I mean, we got told all off season, CFB 25, said say, oh, it's the toughest place to play, and it's so loud, and it was loud, and it was rocking, and that was a very pro Texas A&M crowd. It was everything that you'd hope it would be. The A&M fans were a little nuts after the game, but like the whole week leading up, or the 2 days leading up to it, or the day before I got there, and then the day of the game, the day I left, they were upset with their team, but super gracious, super kind, great college environment. I haven't heard any complaints from Notre Dame fans about being mistreated, or it was just a great college environment. And it was loud, and it was rocking, and they had the cannons and the chants and all the other cult stuff that they do. And Notre Dame handled it all and said, hey, but that's all fine. That's all great, but we're better than you, and we're going to prove it. And that's exactly what they did, man. So I'm excited about that. Some other teams that I'm high on. I mean, nobody's the only team whose opinion I've changed on from the start of the season really is Florida State. I mean, I thought Florida State was going to be good again. I thought that they were going to be good up front. I thought they were going to be able to run the football. I still don't understand why Lawrence Toafili doesn't play more. I'll never understand that. Their receivers, I didn't expect to be very good. They're even worse than I thought they were going to be. DJ's DJ. He's just kind of, he is what he is. Their defense has not been nearly as good as I thought they were going to be. And the thing is, like, they got guys coming back that were good football players last year, and they're just soft. They're just mentally soft. I'm trying to remember who it was I was talking to, or maybe I was listening to somebody that was talking about it, but they were saying like they were over in, this might have been something I heard on a show, but they were talking about how they were around the Florida State players, and they were talking like about Georgia Tech, like Georgia Tech was nobody. Like, yeah, this team's got a lot of false confidence, a lot of false enthusiasm, and when they got punched in the mouth, they weren't able to handle it, and that's a big concern. So that's the only team that I would look at and say, boy, they're way different than I thought they would be. I mean, everybody else, I mean, what did we really learn about top teams with the slates that they played? Like people overreacting. Oh, Oregon. I'm like, I don't care what Oregon did against Idaho. They walked through that game and still outgained Idaho by a couple hundred yards. Penn State had an impressive win. I expected them to have an impressive win. I like that Penn State team. I'm normally think Penn State's overrated, but I've said before, I like this Penn State football team. Michigan looked about exactly how I thought Michigan was going to look in their first game coming back. I'll say here's a team that actually impressed me a lot. USC, I'll say this, USC, I told you all this whole offseason they were going to be a lot better on defense. I thought I picked them to win by 4. They won by 7. Tennessee looked how I thought they would look on offense. Their defense was a little better than I thought it was going to be. LSU's defense is better coached, but still not talented. Their offense is not as good as people think it's going to be. Not surprising at all. And I mean, outside of that, I mean, what can we really learn about a lot of teams that we go into the season? I'll tell you one team, however, that I did look at on the opener and say that team showed me something that I didn't think they had is Miami. And we all knew Miami has talent. And we all knew that the portal and also we talked about how he's done a really nice job high school recruiting. Yeah, they have talent, but can they get that talent to play together? Will they play hard? Will they handle the environment? They had not shown any ability to really go on the road and play with any kind of mental toughness. This is just a team that gets smacked around and doesn't handle environments very well. And, last year lost at North Carolina, lost at NC State, lost at Florida State. I mean, their only road wins last year were over Temple and Boston College. Lost in a bowl game. It's like, how are they going to be? And then they come out against Florida and smacked Florida. Absolutely smacked Florida. And so, that's kind of, one of those things you look and say, okay, this Miami team's got a little something to them, at least for this one game. Now, I want to see it a little bit, but Miami took it to Florida. And there was a couple times when they made mistakes that gave Florida a short field, and they buckled down and held them to field goals. And it was good stuff, man. So I was impressed by Miami in the opener. There's no doubt. Other than that, the teams I was impressed by were teams I expected to be impressed by, or, and that's kind of, that was something that I thought was was good for the ACC. They needed somebody to look good in the opener, and some, at least one of their good teams to look good in the opener. And Miami was that team. Good question. We got some college football questions coming in there today. I love it. Andrew Burke with a super chat. Thank you, Andrew, very, very much. Asked the question, when did you realize that Notre Dame was going to win last week? And me, when Coach Marcus Freeman cracked that sly smile on TV after getting stopped on fourth down. So I didn't see that because I don't watch the game during it, Andrew. But I'll tell you when I knew. When they went down and scored to make it 2013, the game was over, in my opinion. And I know there's like us in the group text with it. It's like Trevor, Ryan, Vince, Sean Davis were all like in a group text during the game. And I'm also like, I got my dad texting me. I got my buddy Jason texting me, Spanky from the chat. We're texting during the game. And like almost everybody to a man was like, still a lot of time left and all that kind of stuff. At least anybody that responded. And I was like, I once they scored that touchdown, I said, game's over. Like, they're not going to go down and score on this defense. There's no way they're going to go and score on this defense. And I probably shouldn't have felt that way because, like, again, they did give that up against Ohio State last year, but this isn't Ohio State. They don't have the receivers Ohio State had. They don't have a Julian Fleming, much less than a Mecca Buka or a Marvin Harrison. So there's no way they were going to go down and score. So when Jeremiah Love took off and I saw him crease the second level, and it was him and a DB in space, that's a touchdown. And once he scored, I was like, it's ball game. I was worried on that offensive drive because I thought that Marcus Freeman was going to settle for a field goal and play for a field goal. And the last two times he's tried to do that, the running backs have been like, sorry, I'm going to take this to the house, which is what they should do, play for the score, in my opinion. But I thought it was over when they scored. That's when I thought it was over. And I wasn't like the fourth down breakup, like they lined up for that fourth down. I was like, nah, they're not going to complete a pass here. Like maybe they scramble, but I thought the game was already over. So that's kind of when I felt good about Notre Dame winning, is because I just wasn't sure up into that point in time that the offense had what it took to go down there and win. And I was very nervous about going overtime because A&M was starting to lean on the Notre Dame defense a little bit and start to move them around a little bit. That got me a little bit concerned. So when he broke that off, I said, okay, it's there. Back up, asked, will we see a fullback dive this season? I hope not. Unless it's still like a Jadarian Price or something like that in a two-back look. But other than that, I hope not. I really hope not. All right, let's get to some more questions. Got some good ones today. You guys got some good stuff here, so I appreciate y'all getting those in. Here we got Tommy Guns. Could a jet sweep double reverse pass to Riley be in the cards this weekend? I hope not. I'm okay. I like having some fun in games like this, but that's a little too much. So no, I hope jet sweep. So I'm thinking like jet sweep, reverse, double pass, or no. I really hope they don't do something like that, Tommy. I really don't. Stone Adore with a question: what previous college teams are good comp for the 2024 Notre Dame team if they, 1, remain consistent on offense, or 2, live up to their potential on offense? That's a good question. If they live up to their potential on offense, what is a good comparison for Notre Dame? Boy, there's a couple teams that come to mind, but I'm not sure that they're as good of a comp as I'd like them to be, because of the skill talent on offense is a little bit different. But part of me wants to compare them a little bit to, okay, so take out the specific players. I'm more so thinking of the result, but that's not no, I don't know that I like that one. I was going to say Clemson 2016, but I don't know that anyone would really be willing to or able to kind of think past what I'm trying to say. And what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't think that they are the same type of team. I think Notre Dame's much better at running back. As much as I like Wayne Gallman, Notre Dame's better at running back. Notre Dame doesn't have a Mike Williams at receiver. They don't, Riley Leonard's different than Deshaun Watson. I'm not trying to say like they're but as far as like the type of offense they had, big playability, not always the most efficient, but explosive, big plays, step up when they needed them to, dynamic on the perimeter, and then a really good defense. Although I think this Notre Dame defense is better than that 2016 Clemson defense. And so that's a team that I would say somewhat compares to them as far as just the type of impact players they have. But again, I don't love it because they're different in how they attack teams, and so it's not a great comparison there. It's a good one because I'm trying to think of a team that, I mean, look, you're talking about having potentially a top 5 to 8 defense, and if they reach their potential on offense, it's a top 10 to 12 offense. I don't like Michigan. Like somebody said, Michigan's last year. I don't love that example because I think Notre Dame should, if they reach their full potential, have a better offense than Michigan did last year. Michigan only scored 35.9 points per game last year, and Notre Dame better be better than that on offense. As far as like a difference in scoring margin, that's similar. I mean, there's a 25.5 difference in scoring margin last season. And, okay, I could kind of see something like that. I think Michigan's more of a power running team. Yeah, I'd have to think about that, Stonador. That's a great question to maybe ask on the message board, just because it gives me some time to kind of think about that one a little bit more. But I'm not quite sure if I can think of a good comparison with that one, because every time I think of a team, it's like, no, they're not as dynamic there. Like, part of me wanted to look like 21 Georgia, but I'm like, no, Notre Dame's defensive line isn't that dominant. Like, it's not like 2020. Their defense is really, really good. I don't know if it's like 2021 Georgia good. I don't think it is 2021 Georgia good. I mean, that team held, let's see, they had 3 shutouts. They held 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more teams to 7 points or fewer. They held, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 more teams to 13 points or fewer. I mean, that was a generational defense. I don't know that Notre Dame is that good on defense. So that's what I was like. So that one doesn't make a lot of sense. Somebody said Bama 23. I think this Notre Dame's offense is going to be even if in his premise they just remain consistent on offense, they're still going to be way better than Alabama was on defense last year, or on offense last year. Alabama's offense last year was very mediocre. They scored 34 points in the season, and that includes 56 against Middle Tennessee, 66 against Chattanooga. If you look at Alabama's actually, I'm going to look at that. Let's go to 23, and let's look at scoring offense against FBS teams only. And Alabama only scored 31.5 points per game. Notre Dame better score way more than 31 points per game this I mean, Notre Dame was 8th last year in scoring against FBS-only teams at 37.8, and they were 0.2 behind Memphis. So they better be a whole lot better than Alabama last year. So, again, that would be very disappointing for me, because you look at that Alabama team last year. I mean, their offense was a problem all year. And I mean, like you look at like the game last year against Texas A&M. They only rushed for 23 yards on 26 carries against Texas A&M last year. So, yeah, I'm going to have to think about that one, to be honest with you. I got to think about that one. Maybe put that on the board and give me some time to think about it, because it's a really good question, but I'd have to kind of go through the schedule and really or not the schedule, but the years and think through some different teams. But and people are giving some answers, and I like that, but I just like none of those really kind of impressed me. And I don't buy the whole, but Michigan called off the Dogs nonsense no, they didn't call off the Dogs last year. I mean, they were a good offense. They were a methodical offense. They were not a lighted up offense. And I think Notre Dame, now I'll say this, Andrew, if Notre Dame just remains consistent, like to the first one, then I could maybe say they are like Michigan's offense last year. Sure. Different in style, more dynamic quarterback and a little bit more speed at receiver, maybe not nearly as good on the offensive line, similar at running back production-wise, but more dynamic. So, I mean, Andrew, that might be a good one if number 1 is true, but if number 2 is true, then Notre Dame should be a lot better than what Michigan was on offense last year. And, and they're very different style of defense as well. So that'll be an interesting to see. very interesting one to see. So good question, Stone Door. I have to think more about that one. B Fast is BP Haas, sorry. With concerns about our size on the D line after the Rubio injury, do you see Sevillano carving himself a role? We could use a big boy or two in the middle. I just don't have that same concern. I know. Look, here's the deal. Like when you're a really good team, people got to find something to be nervous about, especially Notre Dame fans, because y'all can convince yourselves all you want that you're past BK PTSD, but we're not. Let's be honest, we're not. Are there going to be games where Notre Dame's lack of top size necessarily can be a matchup problem? Of course there are. But there's also, if you're really big, there's also games where your lack of athleticism can be a little bit of a concern. And there's always matchups that don't favor you. I don't care who you are. I'm not concerned about Notre Dame's lack of size on the defensive line. It just doesn't concern me the way that it does some people. They're actually bigger than they were last year on the D line. And they missed Rubio for like 4 or 5 games last year. Rubio, I don't think, played against Ohio State, I don't think. Or was that the game he got hurt against? I have to go back and look. But he missed several games last year, and they were fine. Yeah, it'd be nice to have him back. But I think Notre Dame's going to be just fine this season up front. I do. They just got to play better. It wasn't a lack of size. They just got to play better. So NC State, he didn't play. Gabriel didn't play against NC State. Did play against Ohio State. Didn't play much. They were fine there. Didn't play against Louisville. Again, I don't think size was the problem. He did play against Duke and played against Clemson. It was still a problem. So, but to your point, I do think that I'd like to see, because like just in theory, I'd always like to have the option of having a bigger guy in certain situations. That's always something that you should want to have. But I don't think Sevillano is necessarily that guy that I would turn to. I think Armel Mukum is. He's a 300-plus pounder. He's got some size to him as well. He'd be the guy that I would turn to before I would turn to Sevillano in normal down and distances. Now, could Sevillano carve himself a role as a nose tackle? Sure. But here's the other thing about Sean Sevillano. I think he's a 5-year player. I think he's one of those guys that you have a chance to get 5 years out of. So I wouldn't necessarily want to use that year of eligibility just while Gabriel Rubio's out. I would want to see kind of how quickly you're going to get Gabriel back, but I'd get Armo Mukum queued up. That's who I would put in there more. Wyatt Kerwin. Hey guys, maybe I missed it or it was on the premium boards, but I didn't hear much on Emil Wagner's first start. What was your evaluation of his performance for A&M? I talked about it in my video breakdown, so you definitely missed it on the boards. But I thought he was steady. Got knocked back a couple times into the quarterback, which is just going to happen. So, like on one of them, he gets in his pass and he just kind of sticks his arm out. And he's like waiting on the Texas guy, and the guy grabs his hand and kind of just shoves him back. Like, I don't know what that was. I don't necessarily want to see that again. You know, get into your set when that guy comes and use your hands for force. Emil's got very strong hands. In order to somewhat negate his lack of girth, which he had. I mean, you guys can see it in the All-22. I did a run game breakdown. You can just watch the All-22 that I put in there. Watch the tight copy and go from left to right. And you just see a big difference in body type when you get to Emil Wagner. He's a narrower frame, smaller butt, smaller legs. He's just a thinner guy. But he's got really strong hands, and he's a pretty decent athlete. He's got to start using those hands more effectively. That's what's going to help him kind of play that a little bit more. So I just want to see more of that from him. But overall, he was solid. He didn't have a lot of mistakes. He played a lot like he did in the blue gold game, to be honest with you, which is, a couple plays. Look, when you play a D line as good as A&M, you're going to get beat sometimes. I don't care who you are. I mean, if Joe Walt and Blake Fisher came back, there'd be snaps in the run game where Joe Walt might get beat, and there'd be snaps in the run and pass game that Blake Fisher would get beat. That's just going to happen when you play a really good defensive line. And so Emil had some plays where he got beat. But overall, I thought he held his own well. Got an okay push in the run game at times. I want to see him be a little bit more forceful. He looked, honestly, Wyatt, like a guy making his first career start with some talent. He had some plays where that's what I want to see from him, and some other plays where he didn't play with the same force you want because it looked like he wasn't quite sure what he was doing. But it was a good first test for Emil. I thought he held his own. He showed some good things, and now it's about building on that. So, I just want to see him be more forceful. That's really the big thing for me with Emil. Let's get to our next question, which is from Carlos Garza. Carlos asked, Brian, did you get to try any Texas barbecue while you were down here? Unfortunately, I did not. So my travel for this game was a train wreck. And I ended up not landing in College Station until about 12:30 at night. I was stuck in the Dallas airport, and I made the mistake a few years ago of having barbecue in an airport, and it was just terrible. So I did not do that. And then on Saturday, I had to take it was a little tiny airport. The guy tells me only usually have like 2 to 3 flights out a day, 3 to 5 at the most. So the rental car counter, which was like 2 of them, was closed down at 10:30. And so I had to get a cab to go back to the hotel. And then the next morning I had to get a cab to go back to the airport, get my rental car. And by the time I did all that, I had some stuff I had to finish up to get ready for the game and then leave for the game. And then my flight was at 10 o'clock in the morning. So no, unfortunately, I did not have a chance to do any of that. And hopefully I'll get another crack at that because I do love Texas barbecue, Carlos. I do. I think last time I was there and had it, I'm trying to think when it was. Maybe 2018 for the Clemson game. I certainly had some then. And I was there I'm trying to remember. I went there recently. I had a layover in Dallas like a year or two ago from another game I was going to, and that's when I had the airport barbecue. So I'll never do that again. Never do that again. All right, let's get to some more questions here. Iden Banami with a question here. He's asked, "What is Jordan?" Also, he already answered that one. Also, I really do think these RBs can both get to 1,000 yards. They are both unfreaking real. Well, if they're both going to get to 1,000 yards, they didn't get off to a great start. If they're both going to get to 1,000 yards, I mean, Jeremiah Love rushed for 91 yards. That gets him to slightly over 1,000 yards. If we're talking about the 13, 12 plus 1 type thing, that would get him to about 1183. And Jadarian Price at 44 would get him to 572. So now there's going to be games where Jadarian gets more yards, but I look, 1,000 yards is going to be tough for these guys, for both of them to get to 1,000 yards of just rushing. I've said before, I think they both get to 1,000 yards in total offense. That would not shock me at all. But rushing, it'd be pretty good, but I don't see it. Hope I'm wrong. David Knight, what is the best about an NC? The journey of the season, the actual game win, or the afterglow? Well, I think it depends, David. I think there's different aspects. I think during, like, when you talk about it, like the present, it's the journey, which is culminated by the actual game, right? But you enjoy that journey. The game is huge. The afterglow is important, but like in the present, it's the journey. And then when we get to that game, and that moment will be that game. And the afterglow that next morning, like, I even think about like waking up on Sunday morning and just being like fired up about the game that they just played. And that was an opener against a team I thought they were going to beat. But when you look back at like history, then I think that changes a little bit. So like, I think the journey eventually becomes the prominent aspect. So like if you talk about the 1988 Notre Dame team, I rarely have people talk about the Fiesta Bowl. Rarely. That was almost a foregone conclusion. And it's different now, obviously, with the playoff. But people talk about, the Michigan game and the growth of that team, and that led to the Miami game. And then you had the USC game, and you had all these different things about the regular season. They talk about, the emergence of Tony Rice and Chris Zorich becoming a playmaker, and the linebackers, and this All-American. And the journey is what we remember, I think, more than anything. At least that's my experience with the title that I lived through with Notre Dame, and the conversations we have about it. The journey is the story over time. I think if you're going to look in the present, it's building blocks. But the thing that in today's era, I think would hold the most is, in my opinion, most likely it'll be the actual championship game. I think that'll be the one that for the immediate present and future, it's that game. It's did you see what they did to so-and-so? And then as time goes on, it becomes less about that game and more about the journey. For me as a fan and you as a fan, and I mean, the afterglow is going to feel pretty good, but that kind of fades pretty quickly at least it does for me. And you start thinking about what's next. So yeah, I think in the present, it's the game, the journey. Once you get through the whole season, you look back at the season, it's that game. But then the longer you go, it's the journey. That's that. At least that's kind of how I see it. Sean, and of course it's different for every person too. Sean Green, do you see Billy Napier making it past September at Florida? A loss at A&M might well guarantee he doesn't. Sean, that's an interesting one, man. We asked about this last week, and I looked at the schedule, and I was like, man, that A&M game, if let's say they beat Samford this weekend and blow Samford out, and you get into the A&M game, you're at home, you lose that game. If they get blown up by A&M, that could be it. That could be it. If they just lose a close game to A&M, I don't know if that'll necessarily be it. But then you go on the road at Mississippi State the next week, and then I'm starting to wonder, like, okay, can you even win that game? Like, will that team have quit by then? Will there be like any fight left in that team? Like, that's the question that I'm very curious about, is what kind of fight's going to be left in that team if they do lose to A&M? That's a big question, and that's going to factor a lot into it. If he survives A&M and they go on the road and beat Mississippi State, okay, then he'll survive September, obviously. But I really think the A&M game, Sean, to your point, it's gonna be about, if he does get fired after that game, it's gonna be about how they play. If they battle their butts off for 60 minutes and A&M's just a better team, which they are, in my opinion, then it's hey, we battled our butts off. We got our freshman quarterback. Let's try to get another win next weekend, and maybe that a really hard fought close loss keeps his job until he loses again. But like, everybody keeps talking about, like, he's going to be gone by Tennessee. There's 3 games before the Tennessee game that could all be the end for him. I mean, could you imagine if he loses at home to UCF? Oh man. But I think the Mississippi State game could end up being the end for him if they drop those 2, or even if they play really poorly in those 2 and go 1-1, because the bye week is after that. And if you're going to make a move, it's good, in my opinion, to do it during a bye. It's hard to do it in the middle of a season. You fire a guy on Sunday, and then by Monday your team is out there having to get ready for a game again. So that would A&M game is going to be huge for that, no doubt. But a blowout loss could be over at that point in time. But then it's like, but would he like? Because I guess here's where I'm thinking through this, Sean, is if they get blown out by A&M, I don't know that would be the week they do it. They still may wait till after Mississippi State and then go into the bye and handle it that way. That's kind of what I was thinking. We got a super chat down here from Sean Higgins. Thank you, Sean. What are some Marshall Stanford moments to that Pete Bavacqua will have to learn from during his first year on the job? I don't think there are any. I don't see Notre Dame having any Marshall or Stanford moments. I don't see any team on the schedule. I don't see that at all, Sean. Maybe there's something different you mean by that. And if you do, just please clarify in the comments. But I don't see any chance in heck of Notre Dame losing to a Marshall or Stanford type of team. The Marshall type of team could be like this weekend, and I don't think that they have any chance to do that. I have no idea. No idea. I just I don't see that happening. I think the things that Pete Bavacqua will have to learn from during his first year on the job are going to be more about the business side of things, not the football side of things. It's going to be about coming up with a plan for NIL, coming up with a plan for collectives, coming up with a plan for, retaining coaches, coming up with a plan for fundraising, coming up with a plan. I mean, look, Notre Dame's TV contract runs out in 5 years, right? They didn't sign a new deal. Like, they signed an extension to the deal they have. And, I think that's going to be more of the focal point for him than, on-field issues. Sean clarified, said off the field issues similar to Marcus Freeman losing to those teams. I mean, I can't foresee that. There's no way I can possibly know what those type of issues will be. It would have to be something from, there's some player issue that he has to deal with. I honestly don't even know what that would be honestly, Sean. So I think Pete's the modern athletic director's role is shifting in a big way. It's now personnel and business. It's handling the business deals. That's a lot of what he does. And they've got all these associate ADs that handle sort of the day-to-day stuff that you have to deal with. And that's kind of where I see his role. His role being more impactful. But hopefully none. I mean, hopefully we don't have to deal with any of those issues. So, yeah. Hayden Randolph, where are these message board questions coming from? I'm looking on the message board and I only see 1 to 2 questions for the mailbag thread. Where should I post my question on the message board? I thought on mailbag. On mailbags days, Hayden, you post them in the chat where you just posted this. So you just put MB or put a mailbag emoji and then post your question, and then I'll bring it up. The only thing that we do for questions from the message board is the Wednesday buy sell hold. So when we do our Wednesday buy sell hold, I will only bring, and we'll have a whole thread on it, and so I'll only bring buy sell hold submissions from the message board or super chats. But the mailbag is meant for people from that, our subscribers and our listeners to the podcast. That's their day to get their questions in which we appreciate. So yeah, you just post it down there, same place that you posted this. Just put an MB or put a mailbag emoji. I'll try my best to see it, and then I'll get it answered, and hopefully that will answer for everybody else as well. Got a question from let's see here. We got one from Ronnie Reeves. Is this defense we play tomorrow stout enough to give us some good resistance, or will it give us false hope if they pass the ball well against them? I mean, Ronnie, we talked about this yesterday and we talked about this on Wednesday. This is a very good Northern Illinois pass. This is a very good group of 5 pass defense. Yes. They're not super athletic in the secondary, but they're long, they're experienced, they're very well coached, and they just don't give up a lot of passing yards. I mean, you just look at, I think last year, I think they had 2 games where they had gave up. Actually, let me look at that again. I want to make sure I get that right. I thought it was only 2 or 3 games all year they gave up over 200 yards passing. And again, they played in a lot of close games, so it wasn't like they had a lot of blowouts. So yeah, 3 teams, Toledo, Kent State, and Arkansas State were the only teams that passed for 200 yards. Matter of fact, they held more teams to under 150 than they gave up over 150. So they held 4 teams to under 150 and only gave up 3 games of over 200. And then another team had 158, another team had 159, another team had 151. So this is a legitimately good pass defense. Now, if they go out and torch this pass defense, does that mean bring on Georgia, bring on Ohio State, bring on Bama? No, it doesn't mean that. It's a step in the right direction. That's what it is. And it's the kind of test that you look at and say, hey, look, this is a team that you should beat. This is a team that you should have success on. This is a team that you should score on. But if you do have that success, it'll be earned because this is a good football team. There's no question about that. So, yeah, they'll give good resistance. And if Notre Dame plays well, it'll be earned. It'll be earned success. Tommy Guns, Brian, do you know the Indy alma mater? Can you serenade us with a bit of it, please? A, I would never, ever sing on this show. B, no, I don't know the alma mater because I didn't go to Notre Dame. And I didn't know the alma mater at the school I played at either. So, no, Notre Dame is not my alma mater. And so I never took the time, nor will I ever take the time to learn it. I think it's cool that the players do it because they are Notre Dame men. I think it's cool that the fans do it. I think it's cool that alums do it. They're Notre Dame men. I'm not. I didn't get into Notre Dame. I didn't apply to Notre Dame. I couldn't have gotten to Notre Dame. I didn't graduate from Notre Dame. So I don't have any problem, being a fan and admitting my fandom and all that. But there's just certain things that I think alums should have a special place for, and that's one of them. And so I don't know it. Don't plan to know it. And if I did, I still wouldn't sing it. I don't know. Nobody wants to have to deal with that. Nobody. I wouldn't torture. I like y'all. I like the fact. I love y'all. I mean, y'all are my people. Why would I want to torture you like that? Why would I want to torture you and make you have to listen to me sing? That'd be so mean. That would be very mean of me. Very mean of me. Andrew Norman, do you think Marcus Freeman, Mike Denbrock should try to work in any kind of trick plays, deception with Buckner in at QB wide receiver? Feels like he could play a role in the offense given his athleticism experience. No, I don't think so. Not this year. If Riley Leonard goes down, then sure. But listen, Tyler Buckner's a very good athlete. I still feel like if Tyler Buckner hadn't transferred, he'd be a much bigger factor on this football team. But here's the reality of it. You've got Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Riley Leonard, Keedron Young, Aeneas Williams, Jaden Greathouse, Jaden Harrison, KK Smith. You'll get Jordan Faison back. Those are all guys who can do some things carrying the football. There's no need to take reps away from them to get Tyler Buckner reps to get him ready to play. Just don't. You don't need to do that. In 2021, you needed to do that. In 2024, you don't need to do that. So, no, I would not waste time on that. Would not waste any time on that during practice. John Lacey, I thought the D played great last week. Do you think all the missed tackles were due to adrenaline of the game, or do you have concerns that it's more of the same issues from last year? Well, I think it's very similar to last year, but look, John, last year they didn't tackle well early in the year and got better and better and better as the season went on. That's college football nowadays. I mean, I watched a lot of college football games from this past weekend. Missed tackles are a problem at a lot of places because you can't practice it like you used to. So I don't think anything to do with the adrenaline of the game. I think it's more about the speed of the game. I think it's more about this is the first time you've really – I mean, you have like the scrimmage they probably tackle, but even then you can't tackle the quarterback. And that's one of the issues that I have. You can't tackle the quarterback in practice, and then you get to a game, and guess what? Quarterback scrambling, and you can't get to him. I don't want them hitting Riley Leonard. It's just a reality of it. But I think it's just early season woes because you can't practice anymore like you used to when it comes to tackling. You don't do a lot of live tackling in practice, and so first game doesn't concern me too much. If we're sitting here, going into the Louisville game, and they've had 4 or 5, that kind of thing, then that would be a concern. That would be a very big concern. So this is from Martine, who's a Notre Dame alum here. Always felt like the alma mater belongs to anyone who loves Notre Dame in any and all aspects. That's fair. I mean, that's fine. And I'm not, just so you're clear, I'm not telling other non-Notre Dame people, non-Notre Dame alums that they can't or shouldn't sing the alma mater. I'm not saying that at all. Go for it. I'm just telling you why I wouldn't sing it and why I don't sing it, because it's not my alma mater. So I don't have any problem with anybody that wants to do it. Go for it. I mean, especially if Notre Dame alums have no problem with it, that's pretty cool. I respect that. It's just for me, like a lot of times I'll tell you what I do and don't do. I'm not telling you have to do that or don't do that. I'm just telling you why I don't do it. And that's the reason that I haven't learned it, nor would I learn it. And here's the other thing too is, what are the odds that I'm at a Notre Dame game in a capacity where I could sing it? Like Tim Priester, for example, is an alum of Notre Dame. And he goes down, like I stay up in the press box in the end of games and finish writing. But Tim and the other, beat writers and stuff, they go down in the field. And Tim's an alum. Tim played baseball at Notre Dame. He graduated from Notre Dame, loves Notre Dame as an institution. But he doesn't sing the alma mater because he's there in a professional capacity. At least he doesn't do it like at football games. He doesn't get there with somebody and do all that because he's there in a professional capacity. That's the other thing too is I wouldn't be able to sing it at a game. I wouldn't be able to, so what's the point of me learning it? So that's another reason as well. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, Jason, I tell Brian what he should do all the time and he don't listen. You are absolutely correct on that. Absolutely correct on that, buddy. Nor will I. Nor will I. You got a couple other things about me singing, so I'm making a smart decision here. Stephen Imholt, BD is not looking for thumbs down on the YouTube. You are correct, my friend. Wade Garrett, I think my computer screen would crack if Brian sings. You're probably not wrong on that. You're probably not wrong on that, to be honest with you. I think there's some truth to that one as well. Somebody asked if I would dance. No, I would also not dance on the computer screen. Nor do I dance in public. The only time I dance is for my wife to make her laugh. And that says a lot about my dancing. So if I want to make Angela laugh, I'll dance in front of her. And I think that sums up everything you need to know about my dancing skills. So There's that. Now you guys learned something a little bit new about me. I can't sing and I can't dance. So yeah, there you go. Somebody asked, is Riley Leonard and Tim Tebow a good comp? They seem to have the same running style and both good arms, but not great arms. No, I think they're very different players. I mean, they impact the game in similar ways, but they just their styles are different. So if you wanted to ask about overall impact, I'd say sure. How they get to that's a little bit different in my opinion, but it's not a terrible comp at all. I mean, I get where someone would go. Bill Walsh, will you shave Vince's head if we go 16-0? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do that to Vince. Vince would probably do it though. He would probably make that bet, but no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. At USMA says your singing might frighten Rita. It wouldn't frighten Rita. She'd probably start howling at me. She'd be like, make it stop. I think that's probably what she would do, to be honest with you. Andrew Gilmore, just on the surface, which roster depth chart do you like more, the 2024 team or the Notre Dame 2012 team? That's 2024 because you said roster depth. Look, I've said this a bunch of times. I think Notre Dame has had teams in the past that maybe had their top five is better than the current top five. I said that about the 15 team, and I think you can make that case on the 2012 team. I mean, Jason Spanky and I were talking about this yesterday, and something I said to Preston Guy at Tiger Bait when I was on with him, and I don't think he quite understood it because I don't think he knew half the guys on the Notre Dame team. But you give me Manti Te'o, Zach Martin, and Tyler Eifert. I'm trying to think of who you'd say, Stephon Tuitt, and I'll say Lewis Nix. I'll stack that five up against anybody's top five. In 2015, if you give me Quentin Nelson, Jalen Smith, Will Fuller, Ronnie Stanley, and I don't know, who do you want your fifth guy to be? Sheldon Day, Mike McGlinchey, CJ Prosise. I mean, pick whoever your fifth guy is, and I'll stack that top five up against anybody's top five. This team could maybe have that, Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison, maybe Howard Cross, Riley Leonard, maybe a Jeremiah Love. I don't know that top five is necessarily as good as the top five at some of the premier programs. The difference for this team, however, is way better after that top five. And that's why I think this team from a roster depth chart standpoint is better than that 2012 team in just talent. Now, that 25 team or 2012 team had a lot of there were some character aspects of that team that made it unique and made it kind of special that we're still learning about this team. But I think the first week of the season was a good example of that. They have a little bit of that. They do. Maybe they have some of that toughness, that mental toughness, that leadership, that culture that 2012 team had. That's what we're going to have to learn. But talent-wise, I'd take this roster over that one. Indy Milton fan said, I'd take the 2024 culture too. I don't know that you can – I don't know how you can make that case after one game, though. That's my thing is we are looking back at the 2012 team with entire hindsight. The stuff that led to their demise in the championship game is not stuff that was necessarily a problem or that we knew going during the season. That team had incredible culture. I don't think one game on the road against Texas A&M, who's good but not a top 10 team, tells us that they have that. What I would say is that it tells us that they may have a shot at that, but there's a lot more overcoming that this team is going to have to do, a lot more growing that they're going to have to do in order to get to that point. And so we'll see, potentially, sure. But right now, now I'll say this, somebody in the chat just said, referring to the coaching staffs, I would take this coaching staff over that coaching staff. No question about it. No question about it. But culture-wise, that team had great culture. And I don't think it was built by the coaches. I think Bob Diaco actually did a pretty good job building that culture, that defense. Absolutely. But overall, head coach and all that, no. But the culture of that team was strong. This team may get stronger, but we need to see a lot more than just one game to be able to confidently say the culture is better. Damian Gonzalez, your thoughts on Deuce Knight taking a second trip to Auburn? I don't know, honestly, why Notre Dame fans are still talking about Deuce Knight. Like, go to irishbreakdown.com. The top left of the page, I'm going to go through it right now. Top left of the page, you will see 3 bars, and you click on those 3 bars, and you go down to football recruiting. And then you go down to the list of 2025 commits for Notre Dame. And just observe. I don't know why we're still having these conversations. So, like, I understand other people list him as a commit. He's a committed. He was a committed player that took an official visit to another school, is taking another visit to that school, is wearing that school's towel at his high school football games. Why are we treating Deuce Knight like he's still committed to Notre Dame? Why are we talking about him? I don't talk about anybody else that's committed to Auburn. I'm not going to talk about Deuce Knight. It doesn't matter. If Deuce Knight shocks the world and sticks with Notre Dame, great. We'll talk about it. I don't know what else we need to say about that. I don't even know why we're still asking that question. I don't know who else is visiting Auburn this weekend, because I don't know that any Notre Dame commits, any Notre Dame prospects are visiting Auburn. Deuce Knight is in my opinion not committed to Notre Dame. I don't know what about. So just because he hasn't done something publicly, and just because he hasn't told Notre Dame what he's doing, doesn't mean he hasn't told other staffs what he's doing. So I don't know what else we need to say about Deuce. I mean, there's a reason I don't talk about him anymore. I'll talk about other commits, but I don't view Deuce Knight as a commit to Notre Dame. And until he comes out and publicly says, "Hey, I'm staying with Notre Dame," I don't know why I don't talk about Alabama's commits. I don't talk about Ole Miss's commits. I don't talk about Ohio State's commits. I talk about Notre Dame's commits. And I don't view Deuce Knight as committed to Notre Dame. Right? Well, name me one thing about Deuce Knight that says he's committed to Notre Dame. He doesn't have anything on his Twitter page about Notre Dame. I don't know about his Instagram page. I haven't been on that in a long time, but I know his Twitter page, he doesn't have Notre Dame on there. He doesn't have committed Notre Dame on there. There's nothing about Deuce Knight that says, "Hey, I'm committed to Notre Dame." Nothing. So I don't treat him like one. I don't view him as one. So that's where I'm at. When if he comes out and says publicly he's going to Notre Dame, then I'll talk about him again as a potential Notre Dame player. But right now, I don't view it that way. So that's why I don't address it much. But I know you asked about it twice, and somebody else asked about it, and that's fine. But honestly, I just don't know that we need to waste any more time talking about Deuce Knight. And I don't have any ill will towards Deuce. This isn't a negative thing. It's not an attack. It's just I don't know why I need to talk about an Auburn commit. It's not really something that I need to spend my time on. I've covered Notre Dame. And there's nothing about Deuce Knight right now that makes me think he's committed to Notre Dame. And the only thing that's going to convince me otherwise is if he goes another whole month and hasn't committed to Auburn publicly yet, which I would be shocked by, I'll still feel the same way. The only thing that's going to make me feel like Deuce Knight's committed to Notre Dame is if Deuce Knight comes out and says, "I'm going to Notre Dame and I'm not taking any more visits." That's it. So other than that, it's just not a concern of mine. I'm focused on Notre Dame. I cover Notre Dame. I don't need to I don't need to worry about what's happening at Auburn. Question from Andrew Gilmore. Were you surprised that Cooper Flanagan, not Eli Raridan, was the de facto starter last week? Is that indication of what's to come, or was that isolated for A&M? No, I mean, look, Mitchell Evans was somewhat limited in fall camp, and in the spring, Eli Raridan was also somewhat limited early in fall camp. I also have told you guys a bunch that I don't really care a ton about who is listed as the starters or who even takes the first snap. That's just not a big priority for me. Cooper Flanagan, it's more about who plays more, and I don't care if Eli Raridan starts the game. The fact is Cooper played 43 snaps and Eli played 24. I don't know that Eli's 100%, but I also think part of it is Cooper Flanagan's had a very good offseason and has earned a lot of opportunities. He's going to have to play better than he did against Texas A&M, in my opinion, but all of them are. But I would imagine that Cooper Flanagan's earned a lot of reps. I had something on the intel piece about that. That was something I talked about, is that he's had a very strong offseason. Very strong offseason. Seth Coleman, did last week's win gain any traction with recruits? It certainly did. Now, again, you got to build on it, right? But I'll just say this: it opened a lot of eyes, and there was a lot of kids that Notre Dame is recruiting that were at that game on behalf of Texas A&M. Andrew Gilmore, what under the radar game this week are you paying attention to? I'm sort of interested in the Georgia Tech Syracuse. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm very, very much with you on that one. I think that's going to be an interesting game. I don't know what kind of coach Fran Brown is. He's only coached one game, but I got to tell you, I mean, he's done a good job he put a pretty decent staff together. He brought in some good players. Getting a Rondé Gadsden back, as I mentioned earlier, is huge. That's certainly a game I'm looking at. Another one, and I mentioned this earlier also, is I'm really intrigued by that BYU SMU game tonight at 7:00. It's at SMU. SMU did not play well in their opener at all, but they had a great comeback against Nevada. And then Nevada goes out in week 2 and in week 1, because they played each other in week 0. And SMU beat them 29-24 in a really impressive comeback win. But they didn't really play well until that comeback. And then you're like, okay, that win means a little bit more something, because Nevada went out and beat Troy last week at Troy. And then SMU this past week obviously just destroyed Houston Christian, which you expect them to. But it's kind of like, well, how good is SMU really? Let's kind of see how good this football team is really, and see what kind of team they are. And we're going to get a chance to find out a little bit about that this weekend when they play BYU. Obviously, BYU won their opener against Southern Illinois. I don't know what that tells us. I know they put up really good numbers. They did kind of put at Southern Illinois. It was a lot like the Iowa game, where it's sort of a good second half win, but that's an 8-win FCS team from last year. Southern Illinois beat Northern Illinois last year, the week after Northern Illinois beat Boston College. So that's going to be an interesting game. It's a game that I think the ACC needs. It's Big 12 versus, isn't that crazy to say? BYU versus SMU's Big 12 versus ACC. That just seems very crazy to discuss. I mentioned earlier the Arkansas-Oklahoma State game. I do the Georgia Tech Syracuse, but I'm telling you that the game that I'm very intrigued by above all those others is probably Michigan State at Maryland. I very, very, very much look forward to watching that game. And, Michigan State had an unimpressive first win from an offensive standpoint, but I think defensively they showed me some really good things, beating Florida Atlantic. It was an ugly win, but it was a win. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Maryland does this weekend. Maryland destroyed UConn in their opener 50-7. I don't know what that means, because I don't know how good UConn is or how bad UConn is, in fact. I was shocked to see, however, that Nick Evers is at UConn. I was shocked to see that, because I liked him a lot coming out of high school. And I think he was committed to Florida, ended up going to Oklahoma. I never thought that made sense. Notre Dame tried to make a run at him in that 23 class, but Maryland looked pretty good. I mean, jumped all over him early, looked pretty good winning that game. So we'll see what kind of year they can have. But I think this game is going to be very interesting. It's one of the ones that I'm actually most looking forward to this weekend. That's sort of an under the radar game. Is that one? That one's going to be a very interesting game. Aiden Benami, Notre Dame needs QR codes of the players on some sort of screen or something. I'd send them money. Yeah, I think they ruled that not legal last week, because Oklahoma State was going to do that, and they said that it's not legal. But Notre Dame football players are doing just fine, my friend. Believe me, they're doing just fine. And a lot of them have different things you can do. Like some kids have clothing lines and stuff like that. And I would say if you're going to support a player, find a player that has some sort of gear, so that way you can at least get something out of it. You know what I mean? That'd be pretty cool. I think Ryan does that. Where he'll kids that he interviews or kids that he's supporting, he'll rock their gear and stuff like that. I think that would be, I'd rather you do that, and the kid will get money from it, but at least that way you're getting something out of it. Andrew Gilmore, when announcing Freeman as head coach, Jack Swarbrick compared Freeman's potential to that of Dabo. Is that the coaching comparison that you would make? No, not at all. I think they're very different in a lot of different ways. No, that's not a comparison I would make. No. And I don't know that there is a comparison I would make yet for Marcus Freeman, but no, Where I would say that maybe you could say that comparison holds is that Notre Dame's not a place that's going to consistently land top 1, 2, 3 recruiting classes from a recruiting ranking standpoint. Doesn't mean that they're not landing elite classes. It's just it won't be perceived that way. You've got to be great at evaluation and development at a place like Notre Dame, and that's something that Marcus Freeman takes a lot of pride in. So, I mean, I think in those regards, sure, that's a comparison, but I don't know if Dabo would be the one I necessarily would want to compare most to. But if you think about it, at the time, it would have made a lot of sense, because at the time, I mean, Clemson was coming off of a down year in 2021, but they had won two of the previous, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, two of the previous five titles. They had played for the title in one of those seasons, and we're in the playoffs all but one season. Like 2021 was the only season they weren't in the playoffs, so it would have made sense. Iden Benami, can you speak on the coordinators being in the field compared to the box? I can't imagine being in the box. Would need to be on the field in action with my players. I mean, we get asked this all the time, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's what you're comfortable with, and it depends on what your role is. If you're a coordinator and you've got a very veteran team and you've got coaches that you trust from a communication standpoint, I personally would rather be in the box as an offensive coordinator. I'd want my sheets. I'd want to be able to chart things. I'd want to do all that stuff. And there's some merit to that. But I'm also someone who feels like, hey, I'm a coordinator I'm a field guy. I like to be down the field and kind of you see what's going on. You feel the tempo. You can feel the energy. And that just gives me a little bit of an edge when I'm calling plays. It depends on who you are, what you're comfortable with, what your communication is like, what kind of, Notre Dame's got a very young football team. As I mentioned the other day, they got 9 freshman or sophomore eligibility players in their starting lineup, and there's a lot more coming off the bench. I don't know that I would want someone else talking to those guys after a series. I'd want to kind of be down there. If I had a more veteran team, I'd probably want to be up in the box as an offensive coordinator. We spend so much oxygen on this topic, and it's just really not something that I think we need to spend a lot of oxygen on personally, because it doesn't matter in regard to what's better, what's worse. It's find what you're comfortable with, do what you think gives you the best chance to make sure that you've got great communication and leadership during a game, and then carry it out. And I may be someone who wants to be down in the field, but if I don't trust the guys up top to tell me what they're seeing, I got to be up top. So there's just so much that goes into it, Idem. But there's really no right or wrong answer. There's coaches that are great from the box and coaches that are great from the field. Marcus Freeman and Al Golden are on the field guys. Clark Lee was an in the box guy, right? Tommy Reese was a box guy. Chip Long was an on the field guy. Mike Denbrock's done both. I mean, I just don't think it's something that is that big of a deal as far as one or the other. And you don't need to apologize, Idena. You didn't do anything wrong, man. It's something that you care about, something you want to ask about. I'm just saying, like, I don't know what else I can say about this topic. It's just one of those things where there's no right or wrong answer. And look, I get why a lot of people discuss it, because it gets discussed in a press conference, and then everybody and their mother writes an article about it and all those type of things. And it's just really not that big of a deal. As long as you're doing it for the right reasons, whether you're up or down, it really doesn't matter. You've got to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons and that you've got a good structure in place. And as long as that's being done, you know what I mean? Then that's really where you're at. Iden Benami with another one. I know we talked about this, but the O-line battled. Proud of them for the first time. I love the pin and pull. I think the right side did amazing. No one said a word about them, which is good. Yeah, it is kind of interesting. We didn't hardly talk at all about the right side of the offensive line, like at all. And I mean, they were steady. Like somebody asked about Emil earlier, and it was just like he just kind of did his job. I thought Billy Schrouth was pretty good. There's a couple of mistakes there. I mean, the pin and pull stuff they did was all related to the quarterback. They didn't do any pin and pull stuff with the running backs. So it was a lot of that stuff was with Riley, and I'm curious to see kind of how that evolves. But they ran a ton, of inside zone. I mean, that was by far by far what they did the most. And so that's going to be your bread and butter. But as we've talked about a lot in the past, you've got to be able to have some counters and I don't mean just counters as in like a counter tray, but you just in general counters to your inside zone. And I thought Notre Dame had some really good counters. They ran a ton of inside zone lock, inside zone read. They ran outside zone twice, and one of them went for big play. They ran counter just a couple times. Once got blown up. The second time went for a touchdown. And then they ran some basic quarterback sweep calls with Riley Leonard. So they had a really nice blend of plays. Really nice blend of plays. T Smith 0323 with a question. Are we doing anything for the home opener? I will be there this weekend and also bringing a couple of my OSU buddies because they want to see Notre Dame's campus in game. I will not be doing anything. I probably – earliest I would do something would be probably Louisville. But right now, the only thing I have planned for sure is the Florida State game is right now currently all that we have. But they should enjoy it. Just take them around all around campus. Like take them over, not just around the football stuff, but get out there early enough that you can get over like towards the Basilica and the Grotto. And if possible, let them kind of experience the player walk. But like there's a lot of cool stuff. Like if you're only like in the parking lot where the tailgates are, you're missing a lot of cool stuff further into campus. Like head over to the library and all that cool stuff. So just take them all around campus because I went to a game, my first game ever, actually. My brother-in-law came with us. It was me, my dad, my brother-in-law, and a friend of my brother-in-law's who's a Notre Dame fan, and a guy named Eric who I've talked to him forever, but he's a Notre Dame fan. But my brother-in-law was impressed by it, and he's a Michigan fan. So kind of, he's more of an NFL guy. He's like, yeah, Michigan won a championship. And I'm like, name 3 players in their team. You can't. But, so it's like that kind of fan. He's more of an NFL guy. You ask him about the Broncos, and he can name a lot more guys. Tommy Guns, will a jet sweep double reverse pass to Riley deep in the car? Oh, yes, that one already. Tommy Guns, what do you think the score will be after each quarter? I'm going with 17-0, 31-3, 45-3, and ultimately 59-10. That would surprise me if they blow them out that quick, that early. That would surprise me a little bit. I mean, I haven't spent a second of thought of what the score will be at the end of each quarter, but my hope is that kind of where you're coming from is on point, because that would mean Notre Dame does get off to a fast start, and getting off to a fast start is absolutely important for this game. We talked about that yesterday. You got to get up to a fast start. You know what I mean? So that's what's important. I want to see them get off to a fast start. So if they're up 17-0 at the beginning, great. I hope that's the case. Because they're going to need that. Gideon Rosa, what was coach's score prediction? I went 41-13 was my score prediction. I originally was going to go 38-13, but then Anthony Solomon in the chat was like, predict coach's score. I predict 38-13. So I was like, I got to mix it up now. I can't have Anthony getting my score like that. So I got to mix it up a little bit. You know what I mean? All right. Alex Trapp, I can never make it to a live, and now that I finally have, just want to say, Mr. Driscoll, thank you so much for all the content that you and your team provide. It gets me through a lot of hours of work. I appreciate that. Thank you for that, Alex. Very much appreciate that. And thank you for being able to actually join us today. So, and hey, John, dude, if you want to have a question answered earlier, get in here and get a question in earlier, okay? Some of you, I swear, listen, I'm going down the line in order of the questions. Okay. I can't read a question, answer a question, and then also while doing that, read through all the questions to see what's going to come up next. Okay. I'm going through the questions. I then got in here and Haggy 24, I don't need you in here anymore. Peace out. Okay. I cannot stand this type of attitude. Okay. I'm going to get to all your questions. It's going to be a 3-hour show for all the questions. And you're in here complaining that I don't get to your question soon enough, or too many questions for my dad. Well, then get in an hour early like Aden did and get some more questions in. And I'll get your question in earlier. But a lot of people like Iden's questions, and they learn something about it. And yeah, it's his question, but it's my answer. And if you didn't even put in a question, then I definitely don't want to hear you complaining about whose questions I'm reading from. I'm going to bring up a bunch of idents questions now just to tick you off. So here's another one from Iden Banami. Many times in last week's game, I kept saying throw a bomb to Mitchell or go deep to someone or mix it up. Am I just being a fan or do you agree? No, I mean, I was kind of saying the same thing, man. To be honest with you, I felt, look, I understood it. I understood the question. I understood why they did it. I understood why they didn't press down the field. I understand why they were a little bit more conservative. I just personally would have liked to see a couple more shots. And the thing is, they did have a couple plays that I think could have gone for deep balls, but Riley didn't read it. And I am going to have a pass game video that I hope to get up tonight. That's going to go through. I've got I want to go through the 3rd and 5 play at the end of the game. I'm going to walk through the pass to Bo Collins to start off and kind of do a video on that to kind of explain to people, like, here's how those plays worked. And then I'm going to have a couple others that I'm like some of the missed opportunities. And one of them is a play where they ran it's sort of an inverted smash. Outside guy runs a burst corner. Inside guy runs like a slide. It's actually the play that Jaden Greathouse caught his ball on. But I felt pre-snap read that Riley should have gone left. If he would have gone left, he'd have seen a one-on-one against Bo Collins on somebody that Bo was going to beat, in my opinion. And not only did Bo beat him, but the guy fell down at the top of the route. And if Riley would have read it properly, that's a huge play, probably a touchdown. And so that's kind of what I want to see. That's what I want to see. They didn't do it, but it was called. Riley just didn't throw it. There was a couple other times where, maybe there's a shot there, but he just didn't call it. Part of it is, too, they were playing a lot of too high safety. And if Notre Dame dropped back the pass, they would stay in too high safety. It's a little harder to kind of hit some of those outside go balls to a guy like Chris Mitchell when that's the case. So that's kind of where I was. But yeah, I would have liked to seen a couple more shots. I would have liked to seen a couple more shots. All right. And some of these responses, Basin Domer, please don't pound the table, Coach D. No, my frustration is genuine. I will not be pounding the table for effect. So sorry. We'll not be doing that one. No fake table pounds from me. All right, let's get another one from Iden. Iden says, were you surprised by the lack of effectiveness activity from the defensive line? I think you're confusing a lack of effectiveness with a lack of production. I think the defensive line did their job. They didn't do it great, but they did their job. I thought Jordan Patelho did his job very well. I thought that Howard Cross did his job. I thought Jason Onye did his job. I thought Riley Mills was solid. He did his job. He needs to be better. I thought that Josh Burnham played very well. They were not asking them to get after the quarterback or create a lot of negatives. It was kind of keep everything in front of you and don't let them get going. And that's really what it came down to from the standpoint of what they did. I don't know. Did they have a lack of big play production? Sure. Do I want to see more big play production? Absolutely. Do I want to see more pressures on the quarterback? Absolutely. But not doing that doesn't mean they weren't effective. You know what I mean? And a lot of times with D-line, when we look at the effectiveness of D-line, we often judge it by, okay, did they make sacks and did they make tackles for loss? And that's a part that can be a part of it. And a lot of times it is. And I do want to see more of that. But other times your job is to make sure that you've got all the gaps covered. And that you're making sure they're not getting anything more than 3 or 4 yard gains in the run game. And that's pretty much what they did. So I think they were effective. They weren't dominant. That's the difference. If they were effective, they weren't dominant. And I think that would be kind of how I would phrase that one. That's how I'd phrase that one. All right. We did have a super chat down here, and then I'm going to get back to more questions for my den. So Doug Saduth with a super chat. Thank you very, very much, Doug. I've been a Notre Dame fan for 56 years. I love Irish Breakdown and your entire staff. Respect your breakdown analysis of all things Notre Dame football. Thank you, and keep up the good work. I appreciate that, Doug. I appreciate that very, very much, man. I really do, especially after the annoyance of some recent comments that were made. I really appreciate that. I really do, because I think that I kind of work my butt off, to be honest with you. And I'm out here doing shows every single day. I don't know of a lot of people that are doing that, and I'm giving you guys my time, and it's and I because I love y'all. I love being with y'all, and some people don't appreciate that and think they're entitled to certain things, and that's fine. You can think that, but you're not. And so, Doug, I really appreciate that, man. It's people like you and Iden and IGK and a lot of other people in the chat that we do this stuff for. You know, that's it's appreciated. And the people that show up every single day, and whether they ask questions or not, y'all are why we do this. I mean, there's a lot of things I'd rather do right now. I have a lot of work I still have to get done. I haven't spent hardly any time with my wife this week, but I'm here because I love y'all and I appreciate y'all. And even those that don't appreciate us, I'm still here, answering the bell. So it does mean a lot. And I'll be honest, when I first started doing this job, especially when I first started Irish Breakdown, I obsessed over the negative comments. If we had a 97 or 98% like Rick, I would freak out. Like, why did we not have 100? And I got to the point where I was like, that's actually pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. And negative comments on Twitter would really bother me. Like, I don't understand why people don't like. After a while, I was like, you know what? I don't really care about those people. I don't care about that small minority of people who just want to complain about stuff and be upset and be in their feeling. You know what? Because I realize there's so many more people that appreciate what we do and respect what we do. And they just don't say it as much, to be honest with you. But they say it. They just show up every day. And they're with us every day. And it's like, you know what? Those are the people I'm going to focus on. Not the social media clowns trying to punch up and that kind of stuff, or people doing other podcasts that try to pick fights so that they can get some clout. I don't care about all that stuff, man. I'm here for y'all. And I learned that the vast majority of you are very appreciative and love what we're doing, and it means a lot. And that's why we're here every day. And so when you give your hard-earned money, it does mean a lot. It does mean a lot. And I don't think that I'm being petty on that one, USMA. I truly believe that. I'm not taking shots. I'm being serious. I'm telling you how I feel. Nathan, you don't want to quit me. You don't. You wish you couldn't quit me. You love it here, and we love you too, man. So appreciate all y'all, Corey D and everybody. I'll be honest. I'm also human, and it is nice to sometimes have people say, "Hey, man, thanks." I got an email that I was having a terrible day. This is a terrible day a few days ago. Dealing with the stuff with Rita. And we've got all the stuff going on with our house and just the stress of the season. And just, my wife's not feeling good and I wasn't feeling good. I'm like, man, this is just a terrible day. And I got an email from someone just randomly, just some subscriber, and just say, hey, man, really appreciate what you do. And it's just like, I needed that. And so, yeah, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it's good to hear that. Sometimes it's on a Friday when you've been grinding all week and people are complaining about certain things. It's like, you know what, man, like, just what am I doing here? But then you guys remind me why. So I don't think that's petty at all. I think that's, you guys are showing appreciation for what we do, but I also appreciate what you guys do. I really do. It does mean a lot to me. And I sometimes will allow the quote unquote haters or whatever to distract me. But you know what? That's kind of what keeps it interesting sometimes. But you guys are definitely appreciated. I hope you know that. And you're not a bother. So you are very much appreciated. But let me see. Do I got any more questions for my den? I'm going to find some more questions for my den. I guess, Indy Milton fan, more Iden. Yes. Appreciate that very much. All right, let's get back up to the top because I think we've used up all of Iden's questions. But Spark5219, what improvements do we need to see in Saturday's game showing the team is going in the right direction? More growth from the offensive line and is a big one. More aggressiveness in the pass game is a very important one. And it doesn't have to be like a bunch of bombs. I mean, it'd be nice to see some aggressiveness, but aggression isn't always just throwing 50-yard bombs. I want to see just more intermediate downfield stuff. Actually, I have a breakdown. One of the things I'm going to have in my breakdown today, I'm actually going to pull it up. So I'm going to I've given you guys some taste of the premium content, but I want to pull something up to show you guys a little bit of a glimpse of when they threw the ball down the field. They actually had a little decent amount of success on Saturday. they had, let me see here. They threw 2 balls. Here we go. I'll pull it up right here. They threw 2 passes on Saturday past 20 yards. And this is something that I'm going to have up on the message board later. And it'll be part of my breakdown of the game. But as you can see here from this, they took 2 shots down the field. One went for 20 yards to Bo Collins. One drew a pass interference penalty. That's it. Right? Now, a lot of the other stuff, they weren't like, what shocked me is how ineffective they were in the short stuff. They were actually, if you go look at, they were 5 of 8 throwing the ball past 10 yards. They were, what's it say, 6 of 15 on throws of 1 to 9, which I thought was very fascinating. But when they did finally go deep, they were effective. And you know what else gives me encouragement that spark that we're going to see improvement is go look at Riley Leonard's numbers. I'm actually going to have that in the breakdown. One of the things that I chart in the breakdown is I look at the pass game stats like in different scenarios. So like what is it in down, what down and distance here, and one of the statistics that I have is by quarter and by half, I should say. And so I'm going through and I'm looking at Riley Leonard's numbers, and let's pull up the A&M game. The first half of the game, Riley Leonard went 11 of 19 for 74 yards, 3.9 yards per attempt, 6.9 yards per completion. In the second half, he was not great, but better. 7 of 11, 63.6% completions, 7.6 yards per attempt, 12 yards per completion. It's not good, but better. Fourth quarter of the game, Riley Leonard went 4 of 5, 80% completion, 48 yards, 9.6 yards per attempt, 12 yards per completion. So, like when the game was on the line, that's when Riley Leonard was at his best. And so, to me, that's going to be something I want to see them build on and start doing that maybe in the first quarter of games and second quarter of games, and not necessarily waiting to the fourth quarter. But like if you're going to have a time when you're at your best, you want it to be the fourth quarter, right? So but I want to see them build on that. They were more aggressive in the fourth quarter. 2 of the 3 deepest throws they threw in the fourth quarter. The back shoulder throw to Bo Collins, and then the corner route to Mitchell Evans. I think that was third quarter actually. So they took some shots, and I want to see more of that. Build on that. Defensively, it's really just clean up some stuff, right? Eliminate the penalties, tackle better. I'd like to see a little bit more, like Iden's question earlier about I think the D-line was effective. They weren't dominant, but I'd like to see more dominance from the D-line this weekend. That's something I like to see. But other than that, it's like kind of keep doing what you're doing, right? And outside of those things we just mentioned, just keep doing what you're doing. I think that's going to be the key. Got a question from Jason Smith. Actually, no, hold on a second, Jason. Let me get down. I got a couple super chats down here. John B with a super sticker. John, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that very, very much. Iden Benami, a free question for John M. Love IB Nation. Appreciate you, Iden. And then Raymond Harton, we appreciate you, IB. Absolutely appreciate you, Brian. I thank you for that. I thank you for that. And I thank you for that very much. Jason Smith, is there any way to get the number of snaps for the different linebacker pairs together last week? Snead, Kaiser, KVA, Bowen, Snead. I mean, you could. I wasn't planning on doing it, to be honest with you, but it probably would be something interesting to track now that you mention it, Jason. I hadn't really thought about doing that, but I'd be kind of maybe curious to see like which pairs were together, how often they were together, and what was the effectiveness when they were in the game. That's actually not a terrible idea, Jason, at all. That's actually a pretty good idea. Let me think about that one. I'm going to write that down, Jay, as a potential thing to look at. I don't have the answer to that, but I'd have to kind of go through the game and chart the plays, but then who was on the field. It's an interesting one. Very, very interesting one. I'm going to go back and look at that. All right. Beefeater, ND08. Brian, just trying to benchmark sanity check our O-line. How would you compare the O-line performance last weekend versus Louisville last year? Significantly better than last year against Louisville. And the biggest reason why is number one, you didn't have the devastating penalties, right? You didn't have a hands of the face when you completed a 30-yard bomb. Like, imagine if the pass to Bo Collins for 20 yards got brought back because Emil Wagner put his hands in a defensive player's face. That's the impact that play had last year against Louisville. You're down 17-10 in the second half. You hit a bomb to Mitchell Evans for 30 yards, get you deep in your own territory, and it comes back because of hands in the face. They avoided those bad mistakes. Yes, they gave up pressures, but I think I counted like 4 or 5 run-throughs in the game. That's got to get cleaned up. Like, definitely has to get cleaned up. But the biggest difference between not just the penalties and, yes, some stuff's clean up, but the biggest thing is, Beefeater, is they competed their butts off. And they didn't do that against Louisville last year. They didn't do that against Duke last year. They didn't compete. And they didn't fight. There was no fight in that offensive line that night. The whole team, there was no fight. But it's you're a line-driven program. That's where a lot of it's going to start. And this offensive line, I mean, if we're being honest, right? Like, take out context. Take out the context of who they played or their inexperience or those type of things. Take the context out. Did the offensive line play well in this game? No. No, they didn't. If you take out all the context, they did not play well. But did they exceed expectations? Sure. Did they compete their butts off? Yes. But they didn't play necessarily well. They had some good moments, but they didn't play well. If last year's line or the 2022 line would have performed like the 2024 line did against A&M, we'd probably like, it wasn't a very good performance. But what I loved, again, all the stuff that I'm upset about, when I say upset, like as a coach, I'm like, man, you got to do better there. All the stuff from the offensive line on Saturday that I feel needs to get better. And it's a lot. It's all correctable. It's technical stuff. It's assignment stuff. It's leverage. Hey, Emil, sink your hips a little bit there. Hey, Billy, take a better angle on that down block. Hey, Ashton, get those snaps where they need to be. Hey, Sam, you got to recognize this B-gap run through. You got to step inside and be prepared to come back out of that. You can't turn your hips there. Hey, Anthony, you need to anchor a little bit better on that particular play. You got to come off on that double team a little bit later or a little bit sooner. There's all that stuff is correctable. Use your hands better here, Emil. Do a better job getting to the second level, Billy. All those type of things are correctable. The hardest thing to correct in football is toughness and heart. And I don't know that you can do things to enhance it, but if guys don't have it, then they don't have it. And if you don't know how to, and when they do have it, you've got to be able to get it out of them. And that's not always the case. Like, guys don't show up and be tough just because. You got to do things in preparation to get them there. And whatever Joe Rudolph did on Saturday, he's going to have to do a lot of things moving forward to fix the technical and assignment issues. But I said in the preseason, I'll say it again now. If this line just shows up and fights every single Saturday, like they did at their best last year, and now that we've seen it, like did against A&M, this team's going to be really good, because they're talented enough to, when they do things right, they're going to make big plays. Now clean up the mistakes. And I always say, right, young players are going to get better the more they play. Veteran players who don't have talent don't get more talented the more that they play. So I want to see improvements, but man, I want to see them match that intensity every week, the toughness every week, the competitiveness every week. Those are things that I want to see on a consistent basis. And we don't know that they're going to do that because we've only seen them play once. And that's something that we'll see hopefully see this Saturday, but we'll see no matter what this Saturday. But hopefully we see them bring it again. And that's the big thing for me. It's just, I can live with some of those. When you got Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love, and Jadarian Price in the backfield, I can live with some of those mistakes as long as you play your butts off. Because when you play your butts off, there's going to be about 5 or 6 times when it all goes right. And on Saturday, when it all went right, the running backs did their thing. And that's all you can ask for. The other stuff we'll clean up as you get into the season. That's how you look at it as a coach. But I need you to compete like that every Saturday. And honestly, with the depth that they have on the offensive line, look, you have a game like some of the guys had last year against Duke or Louisville. That Burrow, sorry, man, sit on the bench. I got Gerby Lambert, Sullivan Absher, Rocco Spindler, Pat Coogan, Chris Tarrick. I mean, Peter Jones, Look, I got list all Joe Otting. I got all these guys begging to get a chance to play for me. And you don't even play hard? Nah, go sit. Rocco, get in there and play hard. Gerby, get in there and play hard, right? I mean, Joe Otting, get in there and play hard. That's the thing is like you better have that, and that's where competition hopefully keeps this unit more fresh. Where last year there was like no guys knew that this is my job, right? There's a little bit more of that this year, and hopefully these guys handle that well and they go out there and battle their butts off every week. Super chat from ND Milton fan, thank you very much. Which O lineman had the most dominant moments? Sam Pendleton and Billy Schrouth. Those two, they had the most dominant moments. Sam Pendleton probably had the most dominant block of the game, but Billy had his fair share of big blocks as well. Those two had the dominant performances of the game. Yeah, that's a pretty easy answer, to be honest with you, Andy Milford. It wasn't close. I mean, not that other guys didn't play well, but as far as dominance, just like dominant snaps, those guys were at the top, in my opinion. Tommy Guns, the biggest jump a team makes is between games 1 and 2. Correct. Which teams can be expected to be improved on most tomorrow? So I'm bringing this up to address the first part. The second part, Tommy, I just answered in the other question, but we get these kind of these mantras that we have in sports, like, your biggest jumps are from games 1 to 2. That's not always true. I mean, Notre Dame in 2022, their biggest jump came in weeks 3 to 4, right? From Cal to North Carolina. Other teams, the jump comes later. Other teams, you don't ever see the jump. You expect a jump between 1 and 2, but it's more of a cliche to say that the biggest jump always happens from game 1 to 2. That's a coaching cliche, to be honest with you. Sometimes it turns out to be true, but other times it doesn't. And it also factors into who are you playing? Like, let's be honest, it may be hard for some guys to get motivated for this game. People are lying to you if they tell you they have the same level of motivation for every game. That's just not the case. It doesn't mean you won't be motivated. It's just different. Like, there's no way to fake Northern Illinois being as good as A&M. There's no way to fake it. There's no way to fake this being a top 25 team or being in front of 107,000 enemy fans, so to speak. So it's going to be different. What you want to see, though, is you want to see that jump. But I would hope, I mean, especially with this team, because they're so young, Tommy, I think this statement may be true more for older teams. But for me, there's so much youth in this lineup on both sides of the ball that the biggest jump may not come till week 3 or week 4. Hopefully week 5. I hope week 5 is when we see this team play at its best. That'll be important. Let's get them to be there week 5. Johnny Jimenez, I was sitting end zone for the game. Oh, nice. And notice Wegman got happy feet almost immediately. Did the tight coverage lead to this? Pressure didn't feel overwhelming all game. Well, I mean, they didn't get to him like a lot of sacks, but there was a lot of the pocket kind of collapsing around him, like the throw that he sailed that Adon Schuler picked off. He didn't get pressured per se, but I mean, you're a quarterback. You see Boubacar closing in on you hard. I think that was in his head a little bit. The windows were super tight. I think the moment of the game kind of got to him a little bit. And look, we said this before the game. There's a lot of hype being put on Connor Wegman that he's not there yet. I think he will be if he works hard, keeps the right attitude, is impatient. I think he'll get there. But we pointed this out before the show. Go look at what he did against some of the lesser known opponents. Like just go look at what he did against Auburn last year, who's not even that good, or not the better opponents is what I should say. He didn't play as well because he's young and he missed a whole season of development. He'll be fine. If he works hard and has the right attitude, I think he's going to be fine as long as they're patient with him and they run an offense that fits what he does. But look, this defense makes a lot of people nervous in the pass game. And it's the way they mix up their looks pre-snap. They do a lot of jumping, like the linebackers are coming, and on Saturday a lot of times they did come. But that can make a young quarterback a little antsy. I mean, it can. And especially when you've watched film for weeks of how good this defense is, that can get in your head a little bit too. Is even when you're not getting pressured, you're kind of expecting to get pressured. And that's something that they're going to have to, he's going to have to improve upon. Aiden Reese, with the release of the footage of the 2 Colorado assistant coaches fighting each other, are you taking the over or under on Dion leaving in 2 years? I honestly didn't see this, so I'm going to look this up here real quick. So you said 2 Colorado coaches were fighting. So let me see here. Was it in a video? So let me see here. Was it at a practice? Was it in a game? I'm just curious. Like, what was this? What was the context of it? Um, let me just give me a second. I'm gonna try to find this here real quick. So I don't want to click on their stuff. Is there a video? Where are they fighting? Okay, here it is. Here's something here. So, yeah, I guess I don't see the video. But are these assistant coaches at Colorado? I mean, everybody just keeps saying coaches, but nobody's saying what coaches. So I don't know who it is. But no, I mean, look, you spend enough time in a coaching staff, there's going to be stuff like that. I mean, look, it gets promoted more because it's Dion, and maybe Dion did something to promote this type of environment. I don't know. I'm not there. But I had a coach threaten to fight me once because I called him out in a staff meeting. And he tried to get up. I mean, I said, sit down. This is an old offensive line coach. But he was sitting there saying some nonsense in a meeting like, hey, guys, it's not us. We're doing our jobs. It's them. I'm talking about the players. And I said, man, that's some – I was young and did not have a filter. And I probably spoke to him with more disrespect than I should have, but I felt he kind of deserved it at the time. If at my age now, I probably would have been as stern, but would have done so in a less confrontational manner. But you spend that much time with people, things like that are going to happen. I don't know the context of this fight, to be honest with you, so I really can't tell you what it was. But if this would have happened at some other program, nobody'd be talking about this. But it happened at Dion's program, so we're gonna make it a Dion thing and a Dion culture thing. I don't know if it's a culture thing. I don't know what the situation is. I would be curious what Deion Sanders could have possibly do from a culture standpoint. That two grown freaking men, felt they wanted to go have a fist fight wherever it was. So, I don't know, man. I think a lot of this stuff is, and I told you guys this a year ago with Deion Sanders. And you guys got to give me some credit here. I know the media. I keep telling you this. I know the media. And I told you guys last year that the way it is with Deion Sanders, they were hyping him up for the inevitable fall because they were going to tear him down when things didn't go well. And looking in the chat, it says Josh Gines and Trevor Riley. Josh Gines is a graduate assistant coach. I don't even know who Trevor Riley is. I still haven't gotten to him on the coaching roster. He's not even listed on their coaching staff roster. Josh Gines is a graduate assistant coach, right? I mean, these are two young knuckleheads acting a fool. Maybe it is Deion's culture, but it could also just be two young idiots, handling things a certain way or who knows, man. But they built Deion up to get clicks, but also they wanted to be able to get all the clicks from him on the way down because we all knew he was going to struggle at Colorado. It was a tough environment, and that's what's going on now. And there's a couple, right-leaning, I guess, websites that just like feast on Deion. They just love talking about Deion because it's like some of the stuff is deserved. Some of it's like, dude, you're just this is all clickbait. Like this is nonsense. And that's what coaching is now, man. I mean, that's what a lot of media is now. It's like, let me find something that it's like, I'll be honest, like Caitlin Clark is that way. Like I actually love watching Caitlin Clark play. And I do think there's some disrespect that's being done to her that I think is unfair. And there's some things behind it, but it's like some of these outlets like Outkick, they just obsess over any negative thing said about Caitlin Clark and turn it into some big issue. Why? Because they're just doing it for clicks. There's not some moral, like, high ground that they're on to try to protect the integrity of women's basketball. It's just, this is a story that I know is going to get clicks. So anything said about her, we're going to turn into a story and get 1 million clicks from it. It's not real journalism. It's the lowest form of what this business is. And it's the same thing as happening in college football with Deion Sanders. So, and John Mariners, I am not at all surprised that you feel that way. Like, that doesn't shock me at all. It is nothing but TMZ for sports. That's all it is. It's not real. It's not real analysis or real journalism. It's just, let's take the topic of the day that divides people and lean into one side and get 1 million clicks from it. Right. And yes, Caitlin Clark is absolutely the rookie of the year in women's basketball. And anyone that says otherwise has got an agenda. That girl is freaking phenomenal. Phenomenal. She's one of 5 WNBA players to have multiple triple doubles in a season, and she's the only rookie to do it. So she's the only rookie ever to have a triple double period. She's had 2 already. So anyway, Chief Brody with a super chat, 42-17 Notre Dame, 21-14 halftime. My pick cooked last week. There you go, man. I hope that you're wrong about the halftime pick, but I definitely like the aspect of the final score. I could live with that. All right, let's get to some more down here from Ryan Walke. What do you think will happen next year when Jagasol and Lambert are ready to play? It seems there may not be spots for them if Knapp, Pendleton, and Wagner play good this year. Look, I think that's jumping the gun way too much. Way too much. Let's see if they play well. I mean, look, the reality is Anthony Knapp and Sam Pendleton didn't actually play well again in their first game. They battled their butts off. I'm pleased with what they did because they competed and had some clutch plays. But overall, I mean, they did not grade out very high if you take away the context of their age. So let's just kind of pump the brakes a little bit on that. Here's the reality of it. What I think should happen and what needs to happen is every year you can't. You started and played well last year, but are you the best guy for the job now? Let's just say right now, Sam Pendleton, Anthony Knapp, and Emil Wagner are best players for the job. But what if next year they're not? What if next year Gerby Lambert's just playing better than Emil Wagner? You've got to play the better player. Just like you did this year with Sam Pendleton. I mean, you let a young Sam Pendleton beat out a 13-game starter and a 10-game starter. So why should Sam Pendleton and Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner and Billy Schrouth and Ashton Craig not have to have the same battle and fight to keep their job next year when Sullivan Absher has another year of development? Jagasol comes back. Gerby Lambert has a year of improvement. Joe Wadding keeps getting better. Chris Tarrick keeps doing his thing. I mean, that's what good teams do. If you're still the best guy, okay, cool. Then we'll keep playing you. But if somebody's better than you, then so it's not about spots. If they're the better player, there's a spot for them. It's real simple, Ryan. And this is a very fair question, and this is being asked a lot, and it's going to be a dilemma that Notre Dame's going to have to face next year. But there's 5 spots for them. There's 5 spots for Charles Jagasol for next year. There's 5 spots for Gerby Lambert. Are you one of the best 5? And if you are, figure it out. And that's what I love that Joe Rudolph did this year. In his view, he felt the best 5 was this young group. And they put 3 returning starters on the bench. Well, it's 2 returning starters on the bench. One guy that was expected to started the bowl game. But he put them on the bench because younger players are better. And if that's also true next year, then those guys should start. That's the reality of it. Now, it's harder to beat out a talented veteran because Emil Wagner is talented. Sam Pendleton is talented. Anthony Knapp is talented. I don't think that Pat Coogan is overly talented. Zeke Carell is not the same player he was when he's younger before all the injuries and some different things kind of went through. So he just got beat out by a more talented younger player. But that's what I love about this. I mean, if you think about it, with the exception of one of the 2 tackle spots, 4 of the 5 corners in this offensive line are starting because they beat out somebody older. Ashton Craig last year beat out basically Zeke Carell. Billy Schrouth beat out Rocco Spindler. Sam Pendleton beat out Pat Coogan. Emil Wagner beat out Tosh Baker. Then Anthony Knapp had to beat out Tosh Baker. That's where you want to be, right? This is what we all said we wanted. But next year, now you've got to beat out Gerby Lambert. You've got to beat out Charles Jagasol. You've got to beat out Sullivan Absher. You got to beat out Joe Wadding again. And that's what good teams do is you play your best players. You play the guys that give you the best chance to win. And maybe it'll be the same 5 we see this year. Maybe not. We'll see. Like if I'd have told y'all at end of spring ball, the starting lineup is going to be, there's going to be one injury. The starting lineup is going to be Emil Wagner and Anthony Knapp at tackle, Sam Pendleton and Billy Schrouth at guard, and Ashton Craig at center. And the only injury is Charles Jagasol. You ought to be like, hold on a second. What about this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy? But that's why you battle. Do you think Chris W? Do you think Notre Dame could beat Georgia, Texas, or Ohio State if we progress well through? I think Notre Dame can beat anybody. Doesn't mean they will. They have to play a higher level game against some of these teams, but there's not a team in college football that Notre Dame can't beat. And as far as Ohio State, guys, like, Notre Dame played Ohio State down to the wire. They lost in the final seconds to Ohio State last year. I think Notre Dame's a better team this year. Why would I not think that they can beat them again this year? Of course they can. Can they beat Georgia? Yeah, they can. It's going to be tough. They're going to have to play their A game. Can they beat Texas? Yeah, it'll be tough. They have to play their A game. Same with Bama. But can they beat them? Of course. This is not a game where 2020 Bama, you needed everything to go right. The only way you were going to beat, Bama and is it 20, not 2020. I don't necessarily agree with that, but the only way Notre Dame was going to beat, Clemson in 2018 was you had to bring your A game. Now, could they have beat Clemson? Of course, but they had to bring their A game. You make some mistakes, and then Clemson makes you pay. But this team is, to me, on a much more closer to being on that level than maybe some other teams that they've had that were pretty good in the past. Basin Domer, will Notre Dame have a new wide receiver commit before November 1st? I think so. Yeah, I do. At least one. Yeah. Joseph DeJager. I hope I'm saying that right, Joseph. Help me out. DeJager. Would you like to see Cam Williams in the wide receiver rotation, perhaps the specific routes by the end of the regular season? If he earns it, sure. If he earns it, I mean, to me, the thing that would be great about Cam being in the rotate, I'll say this to answer your question. Yes, I would, but only if because if he earns it, only if he earns it. But if he earns it, Cam's an incredible talent. But yeah, if he earns it, sure. But KK Smith's going to have something to say about that. Chris Mitchell's going to have something to say about that. Micah Gilbert's going to have something to say about that. Jaden Thomas, Bo Collins. So it's not going to be easy. And it just speaks volumes to how loaded this football team is right now. But yeah, I mean, if guys, here's where I'm at with all this. I said before, I don't really care who plays, as long as it's the best guy that gives you the best chance to win. If that's Cam Williams, awesome, because he's really talented. But if he's not ready yet and he doesn't give you the best chance to win, then play KK, play Chris Mitchell, play Micah Gilbert, whoever you think gives you the best chance to play. Don't not play guys that can help you win just because they're quote unquote young. That was always my issue in the past. But sometimes young guys aren't ready to play. Pete Weber with Super Chat. Thank you, Pete. This is going to be an interesting question. You get to produce your own Saturday morning college football show. You have to choose one or the other, non-IB, ND journalist, 2 national commentators, and a special guest picker. Who are you rolling with and why? So I have to pick one Notre Dame journalist. I'd go Tim Priester. Obviously I'd think about Tim O'Malley, and Tim O'Malley be the guy to fill in for Priester at times. But Tim Priester is we're watching the Here Comes the Irish thing on Peacock. I was watching with Andrew. She goes, well, why'd they have Tim on there? And I was like, because Tim's the godfather right now of Notre Dame media. I mean, Tim's a Notre Dame grad. He played baseball at Notre Dame. He's been covering the team since I was a kid. I love to joke with him about, I've been reading you since I was a kid. But yeah, I mean, that you'd want to get Tim on there for that. That would be great. 2 national commentators. That's an interesting one. 2 national commentators. Boy, I tell you what, you guys are not going to like my answer on that one. No, I'm not going to pick him because he violates my morals clause. I was going to say Urban Meyer because as much as I dislike him in certain ways, the guy really knows football and does a great job breaking stuff down. You know what? I'm going to go with 2 national commentators. I'm going to go with Boy, this is a tough one because there's some really good commentators out there. Let's see. Boy, man, this really put me in a spot here. 2 national commentators. There's some good ones. I'd want to get someone. You know what? I'm going to go away from the mainstream. I'm going to get 2 national commentators. So I'm going to go with. I'm going to get Jordan Reed to come on, and he's going to talk about the NFL draft prospects of the big Notre Dame game. That's going to be my one. And then I'm going to bring on, let me see here. Somebody said McAfee and Feinbaum. That's really funny, Dev, man, because I know you're that's really well played, my friend. That's a tough one. There's actually a lot of good quality commentators. They're just not pushed by ESPN like they should. Yeah, I'm not taking the guy that picked A&M to beat to beat Notre Dame. He won't be on there. I'll probably go Joel Klatt. I like talking football with Joel Klatt. The reason I'm not picking Brady Quinn is because that's my special guest picker is Brady Quinn. I thought about having Urban Meyer. I thought about having Nick Saban. I thought, those guys do really good analysis, but I'd want to kind of not have coaches on there. That's probably Joel Klatt. I don't know. There's a lot of good guys out there, to be honest with you. I would not have Herb Street on there. Brady Quinn would be my special guest picker because we're doing a Notre Dame game, right? And so Brady Quinn's going to be in town. He'd be my special guest picker. So that's who I'd be rolling with. There'd be a lot of good guys on there. So yeah, that's where I'm going. Good question. It's a fun one. Super chat from Chief. Actually, already got that one from Chief Brody. Francis Monaghan. First time chat. Thank you very much. Another Notre Dame podcast this AM posited that Indy analysts could beat Western Illinois. Who when asked who plays QB, Driscoll, I thought you may be amused. I mean, look, I get the hyperbole, but maybe in our prime we might have been able to beat because, look, in our prime I'd have I'd be quarterback. I'd have Goolsby at middle linebacker, right? Come on. No, we wouldn't beat Western Illinois. There's not enough of us. But I get the point. But I appreciate the shout out. As long as they weren't taking a shot, I appreciate the shout out. I got about 2 good throws left in me. But in my prime, sure, maybe I could ball a little. I could have balled against Western Illinois in my prime. Yeah, I think so. Beezer 12 washing beard. Any upsets you see this weekend are coming down the pike? For me, I could see Tennessee going down this weekend personally. We went over that a little bit earlier. I want to address the Tennessee part. It's possible. I don't see it. And it's not even so much that I'm in love with Tennessee. Yeah, Tennessee looked great in the opener. I thought their defense was a lot better than I expected it to be. They played Chattanooga. It didn't do a whole lot for me. My thing is more of I don't feel NC State this year. I'm just not on the whole NC State bandwagon right now. I just don't see it with them the way that a lot of folks do. They have a lot to prove to me, to be honest with you. I'm not fired up about NC State. So that's why they could go out and prove me wrong this weekend. Sure. Absolutely. They could prove me wrong. It's I need to see it from NC State. I need to see it. And this is kind of been Dave Doran's MO, right? He'll win just enough, 8-9 games a year to make you think they're ready to take that next step, and then they never do. Maybe that changes this year. But, we'll see. But next week, we'll kind of wait for next. You know what? Actually, you just made me think of something. Something I'm going to talk to Bill Bender about is potentially of doing a little short segment on the Thursday show of Upset of the Week, where we pick an upset of the week that's not part of the games we feature. So you just made me think of that. Good job, Beezer. So I'm going to talk to Bill about that one. That might be a fun little segment to look at each week. BP Hast, I remember talking this spring about Jaden Osbury lining up a nickel. Did that happen at all in last week's game? If not, do you see it happening this season? First of all, I pushed back against that at the time, and I said it won't be about necessarily playing nickel. He's a rover. He could play rover. And he can do more as a rover than some of the other rovers can do. And so Notre Dame's we moved him to nickel he didn't move to nickel. He worked out with some of the things because he needed to work out with the DBs because he can do some coverage things the other rovers can't do. And it's kind of like people saying, so-and-so lined up at Viper. Just because a guy lines up on the edge doesn't mean he's the Viper. You guys understand that, right? Some people that cover the team apparently don't understand that. But just because a guy lines up off the edge and blitzes off the edge doesn't mean he's a Viper. A Viper is a very specific thing that has a long list of rules. And so with Jaden at nickel, yes, they called him a nickel, but he was still basically a really athletic linebacker. Now, he did do some things outside in that rover role, but I don't view that as like a nickel role per se. We could maybe see more of that in the future, but I don't think that was necessarily a matchup that they wanted to go with this weekend based on the personnel. And Jaden played some outside, and he also played some inside. Will Falk, Brian, if we want to analyze the growth of the young linebackers, what are some specific things we should watch for? Great question. Will, for me, it comes down to a couple things. More consistent physicality at the point of attack against blockers. There are some times they kind of let guys get into their body, weren't quite sure of, okay, where am I going? And that's something you like when a linebacker's really on point, he does a great job of like knowing when to take the edge, knowing when to take a guy on and, and get extension, and is a big thing for linebackers. And then the second thing is timing of blitzes and timing of pressures. They showed themselves a little too early at times on Saturday, but they also post snap, the timing of the pressures was not great. They've got to do a better job of really getting downhill and really timing their blitzes better to where they're coming right off the D lineman. There was a lot of blitzes that were just not timed well with the front. That's another area that's got to get better. And then there's a little bit of room for improvement also from Saturday, although it's hard to say how much is needed because I just thought A&M's pass game was just not good. Getting a little bit better hunting for routes when you get into the underneath coverages, like hunting for those digs and those overs and those crossers, do a little bit better job there. And then what the end result will be of those improvements is more production at the ball, right? Did a lot of impressive, like knocking guys back, but there wasn't a ton of great on-ball production. When they get better, you'll see even more on-ball production. It's a great first step. It's kind of like the offensive line. Did they grade great with zero context? They graded okay with no context. You put the context of opponent, situation, youth in there, they did really well. Now it's about not doing well for young guys, but just doing well, period. That's kind of the next step for them. Muhammad Abdi with a question. Thank you, Muhammad. Brian, do you think Freeman needs an undefeated 11-1 and a deep playoff run this season to have a game-changing recruiting class like 2013? Well, let me think about that one. Does he need it to have a game-changing? Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, let me rephrase. Another one. Does he need it to have another one? Because I truly believe that the 23 and 24 classes were game changers. I mean, think about all the stuff that we're talking about in the show, right? Like the young offensive linemen, Sam Pendleton, Anthony Knapp, the great running back, Jeremiah Love. We're talking about Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison and Cam Williams and Micah Gilbert and Drake Bowen and Jaden Alsbury and Kingston Viliama-Asa and Christian Gray and Adon Schuler and Boubacar Traore. And I mean, all those guys came from the 23 and 24 classes, right? I mean, like, I think Notre Dame's already had sort of game-changing recruiting classes. That was sort of the point of the article I wrote the other day. It's like we're already seeing the recruiting classes of Marcus Freeman changing the program in a big, big way. We haven't even seen CJ Carr yet. We haven't seen Kedron Young and Aeneas Williams yet. We haven't seen, we saw only 2 snaps of Bryce Young. We're going to see a lot more of Bryce Young. We saw a little bit of Leonard Moore. Like guys, they've already landed some game-changing recruiting classes. In order to see now that they did that, you were selling hope, right? You were selling hope to those classes. This is what we're going to do. Well, now that they're there and you've been there 3 years, now recruits in future classes want to see, okay, let me see the results. Yeah, you sold me on hope, but you're year 3 now, brother. I need to see the results. So to have another one, Muhammad, I do think there's a level of show me there. So if especially if you're talking like 2026, I think there's something to that. But I mean, like, I just talked about 2025. There's some holes. Quarterback's a hole right now. Running back's okay. Receiver's a problem right now. I'd like to see one more D lineman, but man, you want to get one more line. This DB class is a game changer for Notre Dame. Game changer. So I mean, even James Flanagan's going to be a dude at Notre Dame. So I mean, it's building on top of it, but to truly have that class that just, wow, Notre Dame has changed the game. I think so. I think so. I think you need to see that. Yep. Andrew 44, if Notre Dame were to host a home playoff game against a popular SEC Big Ten school, what could the admin do to limit the opposing fans coming? Nothing. The playoff, my understanding, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is Notre Dame will not be able to control. They don't control the tickets. I believe that the tickets are controlled by college football playoff. So I don't know that you can, I don't know that Notre Dame, I don't think, again, I could be wrong, but I don't think season ticket holders get their season tickets for that. I think it's just open for kind of whoever. It's like a normal postseason game. So I could be wrong on that, but that was my understanding of the way that tickets would be handled. So I don't know that there's anything that Notre Dame can do on that. And so in the chat, if I'm wrong on this, guys, please correct me. But my understanding was that tickets are just going to be on sale like a normal bowl game, normal playoff game type of thing. Irish Gordy Knott, what is an impressive stat line for Riley Leonard on Saturday? I want to see him average over 9 yards a pass attempt, and I want to see him average over 14 yards of pass completion. That's what I want to see from him. I don't really care what the end result is specifically numbers-wise because I don't know how long he's going to be in the game, but I want to see over 9.09 yards per attempt and over 14 yards per completion. Minimums. Then get over that, and I'll be impressed. Yep. J. Lynn G. Brian, if you haven't addressed, would you have attempted the last field goal? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is what you brought Mitch Jeter here for, right? This is a guy that's an over 90% kicker in his career. He's basically money from inside of 50 yards. He's kicked in that stadium before, right? Like if you can't trust him to kick that, and I'm not saying this is just in theory. If you can't trust him to make that field goal in that moment, then you're definitely not going to trust him to kick one in the postseason. Now, the other coin is, okay, it's not about not trusting Mitch Jeter. It's, go for the first down and the ice the clock. What ices the clock out more? Ices the clock more? You getting a first down or you kicking a field goal to put the game away, right? Because here's the thing. You have a little bit of breathing room because the one concern would be, well, you miss a field goal. They got really good field position with, some time left. True, but you're up a touchdown. So you have a little bit of time left, but there's nothing that guarantees that game is over more than kicking that field goal. Nothing. And that's what you brought the kid in there for. Right, you brought Riley Leonard in there to lead you on that fourth quarter drive and to make that big play. You brought Bo Collins in there to do what? Make those plays in those big money moments. Like this is what you brought these kids in here to do. You brought Mitch Jeter in here to be a money field goal kicker and help you win football games. And that's exactly what he did. So yeah, absolutely. So I'm all for kicking the field goal there. Put the game away. I mean, game's over. 10-point win with minutes some left. Game's over. Right? Game's over. That's what I would have done. There's no way I would have punted it. There's no way I would have gone for it on fourth down, in my opinion. Yeah, you could have maybe got it but again, there aren't many teams. Actually, I'm going to go look at this. What was the highest percentage of fourth down success last season? Let me see what the best fourth down team in the country was last year. The best fourth down team in the country last year was Minnesota at 82.4%. Okay, so think about that, 80.2%. Let's go down to old Mitch Jeter, and let's go look at Mitch Jeter's career kicking average. So Mitch Jeter, college stats, pull that up. Mitch Jeter is a career 92.9% field goal kicker. So best team in the country last year, 82% fourth down percentage. Mitch Jeter, 92.9% career field goal kicker. And he's over 90%, I believe, from under 50. What gives you a better chance to win that football game? Right? So there's no argument for me that I'll accept that would have said, "Hey, kick the field goal." That's just my stance. So I understand the argument, however, to go for it and run the clock out. It's not compelling to me. You take the points, you put the game away, and you show some faith in yeah. Show some faith in your kicker. If you can't have faith in him now, then what's the point? Irish Gordian, not any validity to the look good, play good thing, or is it more of a recruiting player retention tactic? That's how I felt. I mean, guys, look, I think it's different for other people. Some guys don't care about how they look. For me, I did. I mean, like if I look good, it just got me in the right mindset. It just kind of, like when I played quarterback's a little harder, but even then, like I had my wristbands a certain way, I had my towel a certain way. So we had maroon helmets. I think I showed my helmet on the show before, my Salisbury helmet, for example. I bought a chin strap that was the same color because I thought it just looked sweet. I had my jersey tucked a certain way, my towel a certain way, my wristbands a certain way. Man, I just wanted to feel good. When I was a receiver, like I put my wristbands up around my elbows like Peter Warwick and Charles Woodson. I mean, like this. You look good, you feel good, you play good. So for me personally, yeah, that mattered to me. But a lot of skill players feel that way. I was at practice the other day, or the last practice we're at, and I don't think Sam Pendleton gives two rips about looking good. My man has got his shirt tucked up underneath and a big old gut hanging out. Why? Because it was cool. And I don't mean cool as like, ooh, you're stylish. I mean cool as in like, it's really freaking hot out here, and this is going to keep me cool. I mean, Sam's got like an old military crew cut and he wears glasses all the time. Like, he's like, he doesn't care about that stuff. He cares about, I'm going to go out there and kick your butt. You know what I mean? And he's a lineman. But for skill players like me, yeah, that stuff kind of matters. I mean, it does. I mean, you look good, you feel good, you play good. I do think there's something to that. And maybe that says a lot more about me than that philosophy, and maybe not in a good way, but that's kind of how I always felt as a player. I just, and I was like that in baseball, and it was just like, here's an example. When I was in middle school, this is back in the 80s, right? 80s and early 90s. We'd had those real high shorts. And I did not feel comfortable. I was like, dude, I got like draws bigger than these things, man. Like I did not feel comfortable with those things. And so I was what was it called? Spandex? Is that what they called back then? Those things that would kind of go down. I'd wear those underneath my shorts because I did not feel good wearing those short shorts. I just didn't feel comfortable that way. So I'd put those on there. All right, there you go. All right, felt better. Now I feel better. I'm going to play better. I'm not feeling self-conscious about that kind of thing or concerned about it. So yeah, look good, feel good, play good. Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe that. For not all, but for a lot of players, yeah. Irish Gordy Knott also asked, is it better for team morale to win 63-20 or 43-0? Well, I feel the second one. I think 43 first of all, it's a 43-point win no matter what. So both are going to be good for team morale. But I mean, 43 points against this defense is really good. And you're probably going to be running the clock out late in the game if you're up 43-0. Your defense is absolutely dominant against an offense that has two of the better skill players you're going to face over the next month until you get to Louisville for sure. One of the best running backs you're going to face all season. You shut them down and score 43 on offense, that's an absolutely complete team win. You win 63-20, you feel a lot better about the offense, but you're like, dang, D, why didn't you give up 20 points? So of course let's say two of the touchdowns come late. Sure. Like if you were to tell me specifically, okay, here's the deal. Two of the touchdowns come in the fourth quarter when they were up 63-6. All right, cool. Maybe that one might be a little bit better. But man, there's nothing as a football, and I'm an offensive guy. There's nothing like just completely blanking a team. That's like one of the most disrespectful things you can do to an opponent. It's just like you weren't even good enough to get on the board. I mean, it was true in baseball. It's true in football. I mean, you just tell a team that you're not even good enough to get points. You couldn't even get a garbage fourth quarter. That's how bad we dominated you. You win 63-20. It's like, we just got better players than you. We just got way better players than you. 43-0's like, you don't belong on the field with us. Like, that's kind of how I feel about it. So there's something about just shutting a team down that's just a level of dominance that goes way beyond that. So, and especially when it's a quality opponent. And I think this is a quality opponent. I really do. BP Hast. Could you see the aggressiveness by Freeman to start the second half become an identity instead of a one-time thing? I love the attitude it sets out of the gate. The Warriors were famous for this in the NBA. If you're talking about the fourth down stuff, then yeah, I think we'll see him do that. He's done that before. The aggressiveness I want to see from Coach Freeman is more of the don't be thinking about telling a guy to go down in the fourth quarter. Don't go for the play for the field goal when, or play for, the field goal when a touchdown puts the game away. I was okay with them playing for the field goal after they went up. Like, what I'm referring to is when it was 13-13. I don't want you playing for a field goal there. Right? We learned that against Stanford. You just need one big play to get in field goal range. Make them score a touchdown with less than 2 minutes left. Second one, yeah, play the field goal. Don't take a chance doing something where they make a big play and you get them the ball, play for field goal when you're already up by 7. Come out, be a little bit more aggressive, attacking on offense. Sure, those are all things I want to see. But as far as the fourth down thing, I think you're going to see a lot more of that because of the confidence that he has, number one, having Riley Leonard at quarterback with the skill he has in the backfield. But then number two, a lot of times fourth quarter confidence is as much about your defense as it is your offense. Yeah, okay, you got to have confidence your offense is going to convert it, of course. But do you have confidence in your defense to get you out of a bad spot if you don't get it, which is what happened. And he did. So it was, hey, we turn it over here. It's okay. Our defense is going to hold them to a field goal or keep them off the board or whatever. And that's what he did. And I thought it was a great call. But a lot of that, you really have to feel good about your defense in order to make that. But it's a gutsy call, and I was glad he made it. And I was shocked. I was actually, like, a lot of things Coach Freeman does don't surprise me because it's just like, it's okay. A lot of good coaches make that call. And, but there's sometimes I'm like, I just want to see a little more aggressiveness. So the first fourth down, I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty gutsy. But when they got to the second one and it was about 4th and 2, not just like the first one was like really short. Like, if you can't get that, you're in trouble. Second was like 4th and 2. So he didn't hesitate. I was like, okay, dang, that surprised me a little bit. And I was glad he made the call. It surprised me a little bit. That was a statement call to his team. Hey, I believe in you guys. Let's go win this thing. They didn't get it, but the defense there. And here's something about this team that I've heard, and we'll see how true it is if they get into some tougher times. But I've heard that there's a lot more confidence in the offense from the defense than there has been in past years. And I think that factor we saw a little bit out on Saturday too. Like when and what we saw from Notre Dame to me was, hey, look, the defense, made some stops and the offense answered and vice versa. So I think your defense, if you don't convert on fourth down, isn't going to have the same negativity that maybe you might have in the past when there wasn't that same faith in the offense. So I think that's, hey, all good. We'll get it next time. We got your back. And that's really a good place to be as a coach. Spark 5219. The new video iPads being used in the sidelines, I believe, were extremely helpful for our young offensive linemen and our young linebackers. What's your opinion? I think you're spot on. I think young players being able to see it live, like, okay, yeah, I see it, coach. I think it's incredibly invaluable. Same thing with like a Don Schuler and Christian Gray, and hey, you see this route, man. They do that. You got to play on it. Like, hey, you're not. Look at this play. We're blocking too low. You got to block higher on this down block. You're letting this guy get across too easily. Show it to him, as opposed to just drawing it up on a board. There's still some of that. You got to do all that, but as far as like correcting a mistake, oh, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. So yes, I do believe that it is very important, and I think it absolutely helps younger players even more. I think you're spot on that analysis. Archer 452, I haven't said this in a while. Archer 452, our resident Ohio State fan. I found myself watching games of teams where Ohio State players have transferred to. Do you do the same or give yourself an added rooting interest in a game you otherwise wouldn't care much about? Sometimes. Depends on the player. I didn't get a chance to do that this weekend just because I was so busy. But yeah, I mean, I go back and look and say, hey, did Chris Tyree do anything? Did Rico Flores do anything? And it's in hoping that they do well. There's no instance where I'm like, oh, I don't want this guy to ever do anything. Screw that guy, he left Notre Dame. No, it's like I hope Rico does well. I have nothing against Rico Flores. I want Braylon James to do well. I want Tobias Merriweather to do well. I want Zeke Correll to do well. I want all those guys to do well. I think they're all good kids. I have no beef with any of them. So occasionally I'll do that, but it's usually like down the road I'll kind of get caught up. Or if a game is on and I know Notre Dame kid's in it, I'll watch it. But it's not like I'm like waiting till 7:00 to watch the Cal game so I can watch Tobias. It's not really that because I've just got so many other things in my mind. But you want to see those guys do well. I'm kind of with you on that one. And I think Tobias got hurt like right before fall camp or right before the end of the start of the season. He was doing really well in camp, but had I think a minor, some kind of injury before camp. But I didn't look to see if Braylon James played against Stanford. I didn't look to see that, but I hope he does. Hope he does well. I'm actually going to look now and see if he played at all in that game. I'm not sure if he did, but looks like he did not play in that game. So still has some work to do apparently. Major Everhart played 5 snaps in the game. You guys remember that kid? Really fast. And then the last one here from Jay Clampett Investments. Thank you, Jay. What's funny, Archer? I'll get to that. Archer, you said I was watching the Dalton Hayden. I actually watched the Dalton Hayden one more so than maybe some of the Notre Dame guys because I thought of how impactful that move could have been for Colorado, but they didn't do a whole lot for him. But yeah, they definitely did not do a whole lot for him. We actually have 2 more questions that I'll get to. I just saw a new one that popped up that we'll get to before we get out of here. Got from Jay Clampett Investments. Brian, there are rumors that Notre Dame wants to get more aggressive in NIL. Do you believe that, and what would that mean in Notre Dame terms? I still don't think they will pay cash for high school kids. Look, here's the deal. That's not a rumor. They've literally said that, and we've said that. Notre Dame is very aggressive in NIL. Are they just paying cash for high school kids? Not directly, just to commit. But there's very, very, very good packages that are very large for some of these top high school kids that Notre Dame is willing to get involved in. Yes, they understand, look, this is the reality of the life we live. It's legal, and if you want to win, you've got to and get the best players, you've got to be willing to do that. Where they're not going to do things like, I'll just say this. Let's say that Notre Dame had a really highly ranked kid committed in this class on offense, and a school from South offers them a big NIL deal. Notre Dame has no problem matching that. Let's just say hypothetically, that school also offers a job to, like, let's say a parent or a sibling, and they get a really nice paying job for, that relative of this fictitious prospect. They're not going to do that, nor should they do that. And so I don't want to see Notre Dame getting into things where they're giving jobs to parents. And no, if that's what we need you to get you here, then just go have fun at that place, just hypothetically speaking. But as far as, being competitive in the NIL universe, yeah, they're going to do that. But they're always going to take care of their roster first. But there absolutely is going to be a world, and it is a world already that they're involved in, where there's a lot of deals that they're working out for the kids that are committed to Notre Dame and some of the kids they want. Are they just straight up pure cash? No, and I don't think – honestly, I don't want them to get into that world where it's just pure cash, honestly. And I do think that they're getting a lot closer to that, and I don't want that, because if you have to do that to get a kid, I don't know that that's a kid that you want. Like, seriously, think about this. Just – take a step back from the world of, if you don't get the highest ranked recruit, you can't win universe. Just take a step back from that, because that's an on paper conversation. If a player will only come to your school because you paid him X amount of dollars and you paid him more than anybody else, if that's the only reason he's going to come, is that really a situation to be involved in? Now, your first answer is going to be, yes, of course, blah, 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 recruiting rankings. But here's the thing you're not understanding. Number one, that guy doesn't really want to be at your school. He just wants the most amount of money. That type of kid a lot of times is not going to be bought in. If things aren't going well right away, he's just going to bail. If he does really well right away, he's going to want a pay raise. And if you don't give him a pay raise, he's going to jump in the portal, because that's all he cares about. I am all for making sure, let's just say hypothetically, Dallas Golden wants to come to play for you. School A is offering him X amount of dollars. And he's like, Coach, I don't need that. I'll use a real example. Jeremiah Love. There were absolutely schools that offered Jeremiah Love much bigger deals than what he got from Notre Dame. But his thing is like, look, I don't need you to match what Oregon and A&M are offering him. What I need from you is just something that, like, on top of the value that we as a family already believe Notre Dame has, to just make it to where, I'm comfortable. And that's what they did. Because a kid like Jeremiah Love, look, his family, all families need. Look, I don't care if you're middle class. You get a chance to capitalize on your NIL, take advantage of it. But with him and his family, it's like, look, you got to do what's best for you for your future as well. And he felt it was Notre Dame. All Notre Dame had to do was step up to the plate enough to make sure that they were taken care of. It was never a conversation of A&M or Oregon offered this, match it. Because he wanted to be at Notre Dame. And if that's where it would have been, then I don't know that it would have worked for him at Notre Dame. It just wouldn't. So I don't want kids like that. You're not going to win with kids like that, because kids like that are absolutely going to be the first ones to be crying in the locker room when things don't go your way. This, because you guys don't put enough emphasis on building a team. You guys look at recruiting rankings, and you look at 5 stars and 4 stars and all this other kind of stuff, and you guys just think that's all that matters. Put all that on. Look at Florida State. Recruiting rankings for Florida State blow BC and Georgia Tech out of the water. But they got their butts kicked by both. Why? Because they don't have a team. They don't have a coach. They have a bunch of dudes that got paid. That doesn't make you a team. I'm okay paying players that want to be here. Not just because they got paid. Because that guy will Bear Alexander wins a title at Georgia and leaves. He was playing. Why? Just want to paid. So you invest all that time in a kid, and then he bails, and now you're stuck in no, I don't. You're not going to. Kids like that it's just going to be hard to win with a lot of kids like that. Maybe every now and then, like that one kid at that one position you definitely have a need for, go get a portal kid in that instance. But you need guys that want to be here. And then you got to make sure that you're making things in a good enough position where they can accept the fact that hey, do right by me, but I want to be here. And that's the kind of kids you win with. Just if it's all about, I got to match every dollar to get a kid here, then otherwise he's not going to come here, then he doesn't want to be there. And in this era of, like, you know what, it'd be different, Brandon, if it was a situation where the old portal system was back, where kids had to sit out a year before they left. That'd be a little bit different. But in this era where kid's unhappy or a kid wants more money, they just jump in a portal. I want more money again because that's all I care about. I don't know how you win like that in Notre Dame. I don't think you win like that in Notre Dame. I really don't. So, yes, be competitive in NIL. No question. They should be. It's the rules. Do it. These kids have earned it. Make sure you're taking care of your team first, and make sure that when you make these money contributions and these money pitches to these high school kids, you better make sure that they actually want to be here for the right reasons. Absolutely. Here's a funny thing from Just Your Ordinary Joe. Speaking of Jeremiah Love, do you feel a special kinship with him because so much of the world can't handle the Y's in your names? I do. I love that. But here's a funny story. I now spell Jeremiah wrong for everyone else because I've spelled his name with a Y so many times that now every time, like, I was writing a story the other day where I was writing Jeremiah Wusu Koromoa, and I wrote it with a Y. So he has completely ruined the other spellings of Jeremiah. But yes, I think there's just something about that Y in the middle of a name that just has a little something special to it. That's just, maybe I'm biased, but it just does. And that's kind of how I feel about it. So yeah, I do. I do. And I also, he's got a great family, and that's the other thing too. And you can understand why Jeremiah is the way he is. Like, that's true with a lot of kids. You meet this kid, like, that's a different kind of kid. And then you meet his parents, you're like, oh yeah. Like, who was it? We were when we had Jadon Blair on after he committed. You guys remember that? I'm like, man, this Jadon Blair kid is way more mature than I was when I was 17, 18 years old. Like, way more mature. And I'm like, and me, I didn't listen to my parents enough. I should have listened to my parents more. But you're like, man, this kid is sharp. He knows what he wants. He's thoughtful. He's this. And then you talk to Jay, his dad, and then you talk to his mom. When we interviewed him, you're like, oh, I get it. Now I know exactly why Jadon Blair's the way that he is. Look who's raising him. Look at the things they're instilling in him. Look at the lessons they're teaching him. Look at the standard that they're holding him to. You know, like some things you heard, like, hey, look, you want to make grown man decisions, and you need to act like a grown man. You need to call these schools first and tell. I just love the way, and you're like, oh yeah, you totally get why Jadon Blair's the way he is now when you talk to his family. You want to know why Dallas Golden's the way he is? Spend 10 minutes talking to his dad, and you're like, oh yeah, I get it. Yep, I get it now. Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense why he's the way that he is, because I just talked to his parents for 10 minutes. And then there's other times you're like, you know, like, you want to know why Blake Barnett didn't pan out? Let's just say I spent some time around some people that are related to him at the at the Under Armour game, and you're like, oh, okay, that's a problem. That's a problem. Doesn't shock you when certain things pan out the way that they do. I think that stuff's very important. And so you want to make sure that you've got kids like that. You don't want parents that are encouraging their kids to lie. You get a parent that you find out that a kid's got a parent encouraging them to lie, drop the kid. Drop them, because it's going to be a problem. Drop them. And if he's playing the game with you, if kids say, my dad's I ain't got nothing to do with my dad. He's doing whatever. That's different. But if you got a kid playing the game and then you find out he's playing the game because his parents are encouraging him to play the game, drop him. Drop him. That's what Notre Dame should do. Drop him. Don't. Because if the parents don't support you, then that kid's going to be a problem when he gets to Notre Dame. You know, because and that's true this was true at the Division III level. If we're coming down to, you know, which kid do I want, I would a lot of times say, okay, a lot of things are similar. I'm going with the kid whose parents are bought into what we're trying to do here, because I know how it is for kids. That first fall camp, first time adversity hits, first time you're not started off, you're calling home when to come home. And if you got mom and dad don't support you guys, hey, you know what? I didn't want you to go there to begin with. Yeah, you come on home. But hey, look, no, you committed there. This is why we bought in. The big picture, you stay there, you see through, and it's time to become a man. You need to have that. So all those things factor in. If I got a family that fully supports what we're trying to do, and we just need to up that ante on that NIL deal that we're offering to get the kid here, as long as there's buy-in to what we're trying to do here, and it's not just about top dollar. Hey, coach, if you don't match this school and equal this school, I'm going somewhere else. I'm like, all right, go somewhere else. If that's the only reason you want to come here is, you know, they gave you $50,000 more than we did, and we offered pretty big flipping package. If that's all it takes, and go there, because we're trying to do something different here. And like talking to parents of Notre Dame players that have dealt with NIL stuff, you'd be surprised how many parents of Notre Dame players and Notre Dame players factor in the value of the Notre Dame degree long term when thinking about the overall package for Notre Dame. So, okay, this school's offering me $500,000. Let's say Notre Dame's only offering me $300,000. The parents that get it, like, listen, there's a $200,000 difference now. But first of all, $300,000 is still a lot of money. But you get that Notre Dame degree, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, and then boom, you're going to be successful, right? And that's a fact. And you find that from poor families, you find that from middle class families, you find that from wealthy families. I mean, go. Let's remember what happened with Louis Nix. Louis Nix came from a poor family in a not great part of town. But you know who the biggest champion was for Louis Nix going to Notre Dame and staying at Notre Dame? His mama, because she understood what Notre Dame was going to do for him. And so there's a lot more parents like that than you think. And some of the kids that have the worst parental support are actually kids that come from money. True story. That's not all true, but you find a lot of that. A lot of those helicopter dads, they're not poor families that are just trying to, you know, make ends meet. No, it's the dad who's like trying to negotiate, you know, ridiculous deals for their kid because they're just trying to get this. So there's no one way. Oh, it's only with poor kids or it's only with rich kids. It's those good examples and bad examples exist in every demographic. White, black, Hispanic, Asian, poor, dirt poor, low middle class, upper middle class, and rich. You find good parents and crap parents in every one of those demographics. And that's just a fact. And you want to try as best you can to find kids who have that parental support, because those are the kids that are going to a lot of times be the most thoughtful, be some of the toughest mentally. They're going to be willing to fight more. And also when they're not, they're calling home, and you know that that family has your back. That's important. It's very important. So anyway, that's that question, Joe. Thank you very much. And then this last question from Ghost X: what position groups are you most wanted to see the most improvement from by the end of the Louisville game? And what players in that group do you expect to make a move? What position group are you? So if I have to pick one, I'm going to go one on each side of the ball. On offense, it's offensive line. There's no question. I want to see improvement at quarterback. I want to see improvement at receiver, but I expect that we will. I want to see more improvement from the offensive line. And what player do you expect to make a move? It's a good question. You know, obviously you want Knapp and Pendleton to keep developing, but I really want to see Ashton Craig take another step. That's a big piece for me, is get that guy right up the middle to take another step. That's a big one for me. I want to see him really make a big move, because he can have such a positive impact on everything else around him. And I wonder if having such youth by him kind of is what maybe led to some of his snapping issues, because I didn't see that a whole lot last year, and didn't see it really that I remember, and don't remember seeing it in the spring or fall camp, but it was definitely an issue against A&M. But is it because he's got so much on his plate with the younger guys? Maybe. But as they work more together, he'll work some of that stuff out. But the one offensive lineman I want to see take a step is him. Defensively, it's defensive line. I want to see the defensive line play a lot better. Yes, they did their job on Saturday. I want to see him dominate more. And the guy that I want to see make a move, it's got to be Riley Mills. He can't be what he was last year. I mean, he can it'd still be really good, but if they're really going to take that step and be an elite defense, Riley Mills has to be better than he was last year. He can't just be the same guy. Same guy will have you a really good defensive line, a really good defense. I'm not saying that. But you're talking about trying to compete for a championship, you really need him to take a step. You really need him to take a step. And that's a big piece. So I want to see that as well. So anyway, that's going to do it for today's show, everybody. Thank you all so much for being with me today. And thank you for all the kind words and support. And the audience actually grew we had more people here in the third hour than we did in the second hour. So a lot of people joined, a lot of people stuck with it. So I appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all being here. So I'm going to get out of here. We're going to have a post-game show tomorrow. I'll be back on Sunday night for our Upon Further Review. Sean Stiers will be publishing the countdown to kickoff later tonight. So definitely check that out. If you have not done so, make sure you subscribe to our podcast channel. Also, you can find that wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for Irish Breakdown. You'll see that logo right there behind me. You'll know that that's us. Definitely check that out. And of course, make sure you sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. A lot of you people that want to know more about the details, the stats, the film, all that stuff is message board only. When I'm done here, I got a couple of articles I got to finish. And when I'm done with those articles, I'm going to start recording the videos for the Notre Dame pass game breakdown that I want to get up. It's a lot later than I wanted to, but hey, better late than never. So I'll have that up at some point in time tonight. I'll have that up, and you'll get a chance to check that out as well. So have an awesome rest of your day, everybody. Thank you all so much for being with me. Thank you for the support, and I'll see you all again very, very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.